Welcome back, legends. This is HP Fiction. Here we explore powerful Harry Potter what-if stories. What if 5-year-old Harry entered Gringotts and claimed the ancient Peverell Lordship, evicting the Dursleys forever? If you enjoy epic magical videos, subscribe to HP Fiction. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, The Forgotten Heir. The cupboard under the stairs smelled of dust and old shoes. Harry Potter knew this smell better than he knew the scent of fresh air or the warmth of sunlight on his skin. It was the smell of his world, the cramped, dark world that existed between the space where Aunt Petunia stored her vacuum cleaner and the place where Uncle Vernon kept his winter boots. The world where Harry slept on a thin mattress that smelled of mothballs and something older, something that might have been fear. On this particular morning, the smell was stronger than usual. Perhaps because it was raining outside, and the dampness had seeped through the walls of number 4, Privet Drive, making the cupboard feel smaller and darker than it already was. Perhaps because Harry had not been allowed to eat dinner the night before, a punishment for accidentally breaking Aunt Petunia's favorite vase, and his stomach was making sounds that echoed off the wooden door. He pressed his ear against the door, listening. Upstairs, he could hear the heavy footsteps of Uncle Vernon moving about in the master bedroom. The floorboards groaned in protest with each step, as if they too were tired of carrying such weight. From the room next door, Dudley's voice was raised in complaint about something, probably that his breakfast wasn't ready, or that his toys weren't arranged in the correct order. Harry's stomach growled again. He had learned, in his 5 years of life, that there were certain rules to survival at number 4. Rule number 1, never be seen unless called for. Rule number 2, never ask for anything. Rule number 3, if you must make noise, make sure it is useful noise, the sound of cleaning, or cooking, or fetching things. But the most important rule, the one that Harry had learned through trial and painful error, was this: never, ever let them see you cry. He pressed his palms flat against the dusty floor, feeling the rough texture of the wood against his small fingers. His hands were thin, his nails dirty, his wrists so small that the sleeves of Dudley's cast-off shirt hung past his knuckles. The shirt was grey and shapeless, one of the many that Dudley had outgrown and Petunia had deemed too worn for charity. Harry was a charity case. He had known this for as long as he could remember. He was 5 years old, but he knew things that 5-year-olds should not know. He knew that his parents had died in a car crash, though the way Aunt Petunia said it, with her lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line, made Harry suspect there was something more to the story. He knew that he was a burden, a cross to bear, a stain on the pristine perfection of the Dursley family. He knew that if he were quiet enough, small enough, invisible enough, maybe they would forget he existed. But the hunger was hard to forget. He had been in the cupboard for almost 18 hours now. The last thing he had eaten was a piece of toast crust that Aunt Petunia had scraped into the bin, which he had retrieved when no one was looking. It had been dry and hard, and he had to chew it for a long time before it was soft enough to swallow. The sounds of the Dursley household were starting to settle into their morning routine. He could hear Aunt Petunia's shrill voice calling up the stairs to Dudley, telling him to hurry or he'd be late for school. He could hear Uncle Vernon's heavy footsteps descending the stairs, each one landing with a thud that made the cupboard door rattle slightly. Harry held his breath. Sometimes, if he was very still and very quiet, they would forget about him entirely. They would leave for the day, and he would be alone in the house, and he could creep out of the cupboard and eat the scraps left on the kitchen counter. It was the best part of his week, those rare days when he was truly alone. But today was not one of those days. The cupboard door swung open, letting in a blast of harsh light that made Harry wince. Uncle Vernon stood there, his massive body filling the doorway, his face red and his mustache bristling. "Boy," he said, his voice like gravel being ground under a heavy boot. "Out. The lawn needs mowing, and the weeds in the flower beds have gotten out of control." Harry scrambled to his feet, ducking his head instinctively. "Yes, Uncle Vernon. And don't think you're getting breakfast until the job is done. I won't have you eating my food while my lawn looks like a jungle." "Yes, Uncle Vernon." Harry slipped past the large man, keeping close to the wall, making himself as small as possible. He could feel Vernon's eyes on him, could feel the weight of the man's contempt pressing down on him like a physical force. In the kitchen, Aunt Petunia was making tea. She didn't look at him when he passed, she had developed an art of looking through him as if he weren't there, as if he were made of glass or air. Harry was used to this. In fact, he preferred it. When Aunt Petunia looked through him, it meant she wasn't looking for reasons to punish him. Dudley was at the table, shoveling bacon into his mouth with both hands. He was 3 times Harry's size, a round boy with a piggy face and small, mean eyes. He glanced up as Harry passed, and his lips curved into a smirk. "Going to work, freak?" he asked, his voice full of the cruelty that came naturally to him. Harry didn't answer. He had learned that silence was the best defense against Dudley's taunts. "He's going to mow the lawn," Uncle Vernon said, his voice carrying from the hallway. "And if he does a good job, perhaps we'll let him have the crusts from your toast, Dudders." "Gross," Dudley said, making a face. "I don't want him eating my food. He's probably got germs or something." "Go on, boy," Aunt Petunia said, her voice sharp. "Out. And don't come back in until the job is done." Harry slipped out the back door before they could add more instructions. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and cool. The sky was still gray, heavy with clouds that promised more rain later, but for now there was a break in the weather. The garden was large by suburban standards, a rectangle of green surrounded by carefully tended flower beds. Aunt Petunia took great pride in her garden, and the weeds that had sprouted up over the past week were a personal affront to her. Harry had been banned from gardening duty since the incident with the roses. He had been 7, and he still had scars on his arms from the thorns. He found the lawnmower in the shed, a rusty old pushmower that Uncle Vernon had bought second-hand. It was heavy, far too heavy for a 5-year-old, but Harry had learned to make do. He gripped the handle and began to push, feeling the blades catch on the wet grass. The work was monotonous. Back and forth, the mower's blades cutting through the damp green. Harry's arms ached within minutes, his thin body straining against the weight of the machine. But he kept going, because if he stopped, there would be consequences. He knew this intimately, with the kind of knowledge that only comes from experience. He was on his 3rd pass across the lawn when the world went strange. It started with a sound, a high, thin keening that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Harry stopped, his heart suddenly racing, his small hands gripping the mower's handle like it was a lifeline. The sound was unlike anything he had ever heard, not quite human, not quite animal. It made the hair on his arms stand up. And then everything went wrong. The air around him seemed to shimmer, like the heat that rose from the pavement on summer days. The colors of the garden bled together, the green of the grass, the pink of the flowers, the gray of the sky, all mixing into a swirl of indistinct color. Harry's vision swam, and he felt dizzy, like he was spinning even though he was standing still. He let go of the lawnmower, stumbling backward. The world tilted, and he fell to his knees, the wet grass soaking through his thin trousers. He could hear someone calling his name, but it was distant, muffled, like he was underwater. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything stopped. The shimmering faded, the colors settled back into their proper places, and the sound, that strange, keening sound, cut off abruptly. Harry was left kneeling on the lawn, shaking, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The front door of number 4 slammed open, and Uncle Vernon stormed out, his face purplish with rage. "What did you do, boy?" he shouted, his voice carrying across the garden. "What kind of freakish trick was that?" Harry scrambled to his feet, trying to back away. I don't know. Don't lie to me." Vernon was striding across the lawn, his fists clenched at his sides. "The neighbors are going to ask questions. They saw something, that light, that noise. I'm not having it. I won't have you drawing attention to this house." "I'm sorry," Harry said, the words tumbling out of him. "I'm sorry, Uncle Vernon. I didn't mean to. I don't want to hear it." Vernon grabbed Harry by the arm, his grip bruisingly tight. "You'll stay in the cupboard for a week. A month. Until you learn to control whatever freakish nonsense you've inherited from those people." It was the mention of those people that did it. Harry didn't know why, but something in him rebelled. The words he'd heard so many times, the dismissal of everything he was, everything he came from, something snapped inside him. "Let go of me," he shouted, wrenching his arm free. For a moment, Vernon was too surprised to react. Harry had never shouted at him before. He had never shouted at anyone. He was the quiet one. The obedient one, the one who took his punishments without complaint. But there was a fire in Harry now, a burning something that had been lit by the strange shimmering and the mention of his parents. He didn't know where it came from, but it was there, burning in his chest, making him feel almost brave. "Freak," Vernon growled, recovering his composure. "You're just like them. A freak, a misfit, a—" "Stop." The word ripped out of Harry's throat, and with it came a surge of something. The air around him thickened, vibrated, and then Vernon was thrown backward, his heavy body crashing into the garden fence with a sickening thud. Harry stared, his mouth open in shock. He hadn't done that. He couldn't have done that. He was just a 5-year-old boy, a weak, small boy who lived in a cupboard and ate scraps. He didn't have the power to throw a man twice his size across the garden. But even as he thought this, something in his memory shifted. He remembered the feeling of the shimmering air, the sound of the keening. He remembered moments from his past when strange things had happened, the time his hair had grown back overnight after Aunt Petunia had cut it so badly he'd looked like a scarecrow, the time he had found himself on the roof of the school when the bullies had been chasing him. He had always tried to forget those moments, to push them down and pretend they hadn't happened. But now, standing in the garden with Uncle Vernon groaning on the ground, he couldn't pretend anymore. The back door opened, and Aunt Petunia stepped out. She took one look at her husband on the ground, then at Harry standing over him, and her face went white. "Vernon," she said, her voice strained. "Vernon, what happened?" Vernon was trying to push himself up, but his face was screwed up in pain. "The boy, he did something. He attacked me." Aunt Petunia's eyes darted to Harry, and for a moment, he saw something in them that he had never seen before. It wasn't hatred, though. There was plenty of that. It was something else, something that looked almost like fear. "Get inside," she said, her voice cold. "Get in the cupboard and don't come out until I say so." Harry didn't argue. He turned and ran, slipping past Aunt Petunia, through the kitchen, and down the hall to his cupboard. He slammed the door behind him, breathing hard, his heart pounding so loud he could hear it in his ears. He sat down on his thin mattress, pulling his knees to his chest, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The strange shimmering. The voice that had seemed to come from nowhere. The explosion of power that had thrown Uncle Vernon across the garden. It was real. It had all been real. He hadn't imagined it. Harry pressed his forehead to his knees and tried not to cry. He had broken the most important rule. He had let them see, not just his tears, but something worse. Something that marked him as different, as strange, as a freak. His life at number 4 had been difficult before. Now, it would be unbearable. But even as he sat in the darkness, feeling the familiar press of the cupboard walls around him, something else was stirring in Harry's chest. Something that felt, impossibly, like hope. The shimmering, the power, it had come from him. It belonged to him. And maybe, just maybe, it meant there was a way out. The day passed in a haze of hunger and fear. Harry remained in his cupboard, listening to the sounds of the Dursley household. He could hear Aunt Petunia's voice, sharp and anxious, as she tended to Uncle Vernon. He could hear Dudley complaining about something. He could hear the television in the living room, the sound of a cartoon that seemed almost obscenely cheerful in contrast to the tension that hung in the air. When the sun had gone down and the house had fallen silent, Harry finally allowed himself to sleep. It wasn't a restful sleep, it was full of strange dreams, images that flickered and danced at the edges of his consciousness. He saw a flash of green light, heard a woman scream, felt the warmth of a hand on his forehead. He woke with a gasp, his heart racing, and for a moment he had no idea where he was. The darkness was absolute, the walls pressing in on him from all sides. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. And then he remembered. He was Harry Potter, and he lived in a cupboard. Slowly, his breathing evened out. He lay back on the thin mattress, staring up at the ceiling that was only inches from his face. The dreams were fading now, but the feeling they left behind was lingering. A sense of loss, of something missing. A sense that there was a story he should know, something important that had been taken from him. His parents, he thought. The parents he had never known, who had died in a car crash. The parents whose faces he couldn't remember, whose voices he had never heard. But tonight, in his dreams, he had heard a voice. A woman's voice, young and warm, calling his name. Harry. He closed his eyes, trying to hold on to the echo of that voice. It was like grasping at smoke, slipping through his fingers even as he tried to hold it. He must have fallen asleep again, because the next thing he knew, the cupboard door was swinging open and bright light was flooding in. Get up. It was Aunt Petunia, her face pinched and pale. She was wearing a severe coat, and she had a handbag clutched to her chest like a shield. I'm taking you into the city, she said, her voice flat. You need new clothes. The neighbors are starting to talk. Harry blinked, struggling to wake up. What? Don't ask questions. Just get up, put on your cleanest clothes. She paused, her eyes sweeping over his tattered appearance, or whatever passes for clean in your case. And don't say a word. You're not to speak, do you understand? Yes, Aunt Petunia. He scrambled to his feet, his joints aching from a night spent on the thin mattress. He had barely any clothes to choose from, just a few items that had been cast off by Dudley and deemed too worn for even the charity shops. He picked the least stained shirt and a pair of trousers that were held up by a piece of string. Aunt Petunia didn't look at him as he dressed. She stood in the hallway, her back to him, her hands gripping her handbag so tightly her knuckles were white. Come, she said, when he was finished. And remember, not a word. The journey into the city was silent. Uncle Vernon drove, his face still bruised and angry, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. Harry sat in the back seat, pressed against the door, trying to make himself as small as possible. London was overwhelming. Harry had been into the city a few times before, but it never ceased to amaze him. The buildings were so tall, the streets so crowded, the noise so constant. He pressed his face to the window, watching the people and the cars and the buses, trying to absorb it all. Aunt Petunia had said they were going shopping for clothes, but when Uncle Vernon pulled the car to a stop, it wasn't in front of a store. It was in front of a large, imposing building that looked more like a bank than anything else. Out, Uncle Vernon said, his voice tight with barely suppressed anger. Harry scrambled out of the car, looking up at the building. It was made of white marble, its columns towering above him like the pillars of a temple. There was a sign above the door, but the lettering was strange, not quite English, not quite any language Harry had ever seen. Where are we? He asked, forgetting Aunt Petunia's instructions. She didn't answer. She grabbed his arm, her grip painfully tight, and marched him toward the building. The interior of the building was even more impressive than the exterior. The floors were polished stone, the walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to move if you looked at them from the corner of your eye. There were tall counters stretching across the room, behind which sat creatures that Harry had never seen before. They were short, with long fingers and pointed ears, and they were wearing elaborate robes. They looked like the illustrations in the fairy tale books that Harry had once found in the Dursleys' attic, the books he had been forbidden to read. Goblins, Aunt Petunia hissed under her breath. Don't stare. And don't say anything. Harry didn't need to be told not to stare. He was already staring, his mouth open in wonder. The goblins were writing in massive ledgers, their long fingers moving with impossible speed. Coins were being counted, gemstones appraised, important documents signed and stamped. It was like nothing Harry had ever seen. It was like a dream. Aunt Petunia marched him through the bank, heading for a small office near the back. The goblin behind the counter there looked up as they approached, his beady eyes narrowing. State your business, he said, his voice gruff. Aunt Petunia swallowed. I'm here about a vault. A Peverell vault. The goblin's eyes snapped to Harry. Harry felt a cold shiver run down his spine. There was something in those eyes, something calculating in knowing. "This is the Potter boy?" the goblin asked, his voice sharp. "Yes," Aunt Petunia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My sister, she was a Potter." The goblin made a sound that might have been a laugh. "She was. But this boy, he is something else entirely." Aunt Petunia stiffened. "What do you mean?" The goblin didn't answer. He reached into the drawer of his desk and pulled out a piece of parchment and a small silver knife. "I need a drop of his blood," he said. "I don't," Aunt Petunia started, but the goblin cut her off with a sharp gesture. "It's standard procedure. The Peverell inheritance requires a blood test. If this is indeed the child of the Potters, the test will confirm it." Aunt Petunia looked at Harry, her face pale. "Give him your finger," she said, her voice shaking slightly. Harry hesitated, but Aunt Petunia's grip on his arm tightened. And he held out his hand. The goblin took his finger, and before Harry could react, there was a sharp pain. The goblin had nicked his finger with the knife, squeezing a single drop of blood onto the parchment. The blood spread, and as it did, the parchment began to change. Words appeared on it, written in shimmering golden ink, and Harry's heart began to race. The goblin read the words, his eyes widening slightly. Then he looked at Harry, and for the first time, there was something in his expression that looked almost like respect. "Harry James Potter," he read aloud. "Born July 31st, 1980. Heir to the House of Potter. Heir to the House of Peverell. Heir to the House of Gryffindor." He paused, then continued, his voice growing deeper. "Rightful Lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell." Harry didn't understand. He didn't understand any of it. He looked at Aunt Petunia, hoping for an explanation, but she looked terrified. Her face had gone white, and she was shaking. "That's not possible," she said, her voice a whisper. "That's not, he's just a boy. He's just a worthless, freakish boy." "Madam," the goblin said, his voice like a whip crack. "I would choose your next words carefully. You are addressing the lord of an ancient house. Even if he is young, that title carries weight. And power." Aunt Petunia was backing away now, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know what you're talking about. There's been a mistake. This boy isn't, he's nothing. He's no one." "On the contrary," the goblin said, a thin smile curling his lips. "He is very much someone. And he has a great deal to claim." Harry was still reeling. Lord. Ancient house. Heir to 3 different names. It didn't make any sense. "My parents," he said, the words coming out in a rush. "My parents, were they?" The goblin looked at him, and his expression softened, just slightly. "Your parents, young lord, were powerful and respected wizards and witches. They were murdered, but not in a simple car crash. They were killed by the most dangerous dark wizard of the age. You survived, and in doing so, you became something of a legend." Harry's head was spinning. Murdered. Dark wizard. Legend. It was too much. It was all too much. "I don't understand," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't understand any of this." The goblin nodded. "Of course you don't. You've been kept in ignorance. That is a crime in itself." He looked at Aunt Petunia, his eyes glittering with something that looked like malice. "It's a crime that will be punished, I assure you." Aunt Petunia made a sound that was half gasp, half whimper. You can't take him. He's ours. We've raised him. You've starved him," the goblin said, cutting her off. "You've abused him. You've kept him in a cupboard, like an animal. You've lied to him about his parents and his heritage. You've done everything possible to break him." "No," Aunt Petunia said, but her voice was weak. "That's not, we did what was best. We did what we were told to do." "Who told you?" But Aunt Petunia was shaking her head, her eyes squeezed shut. "I can't tell you. I can't." "He would," she stopped abruptly, as if she had said too much. The goblin stared at her for a long moment, then seemed to reach a decision. "This is not the place for this discussion," he said. "Young Lord Peverell, please come with me. There are matters we need to discuss. Your aunt will wait here." Harry hesitated, looking at Aunt Petunia. She was still pale, still shaking, but there was something in her eyes that Harry hadn't seen before. It looked almost like regret. "Go," she whispered. "Just go." Harry followed the goblin through a door behind the desk, into a corridor that was even more impressive than the main hall. The walls were covered in portraits, and the people in them moved, waving at him as he passed. Harry waved back, still in a daze. The goblin led him to an office that was larger than the entire. Downstairs of number 4. Books lined the walls, ancient tomes bound in leather and smelling of dust and old magic. The goblin gestured to a chair, and Harry sat down, feeling very small and very lost. "I am Grip Hook," the goblin said, taking a seat across from Harry. "And I have been waiting for this day for a long time." "Waiting?" Harry asked, his voice uncertain. "The Peverell vaults have been sealed for centuries," Grip Hook said. "We knew an heir would come eventually, but we did not know when. The magic of the Peverell line is ancient and powerful, and it has been waiting for someone worthy to claim it." "I'm just a boy," Harry said. "I don't know anything about magic or lordship or any of that." "You will learn," Grip Hook said. "You will learn more than you ever imagined. But first, there is something you need to see." He reached into his desk and pulled out a small wooden box. The wood was dark, almost black, and it was covered in carvings that seemed to move in the flickering candlelight. Grip Hook opened the box, and inside, on a velvet cushion, lay a ring. The ring was made of silver, and it was shaped like 3 interlocking triangles. The metal was dull with age, but there was something about it that made Harry's breath catch. A faint hum seemed to come from it, a vibration that he could feel in his bones. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The Peverell signet ring," Grip Hook said. "It has been waiting for you. When you put it on, the magic will recognize you as the true heir." "But I don't know if I'm ready for that." The goblin smiled. "You are 5 years old. You are not supposed to be ready. But the magic does not care about readiness. It cares about blood. And you have the blood." Harry reached out, his fingers brushing the cool surface of the ring. The moment he touched it, the hum increased, and Harry felt something shift inside him. It was like a door opening, a flood of warmth spreading through his chest. "Try it on," Grip Hook said, his voice encouraging. Harry hesitated for a moment longer, then slipped the ring onto his finger. It was too big for him, but as soon as it touched his skin, it shrank to fit perfectly. There was a flash of light, and Harry felt something click into place inside him. A connection, a bond, a line of power that stretched back through centuries of his ancestors. Grip Hook nodded slowly. "It is done. You are now officially recognized as the Lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell." Harry looked at the ring on his finger, the silver glinting in the candlelight. He felt different, changed in some fundamental way. The world seemed sharper, more real. The colors were brighter, the sounds clearer. The hum of the ring was still vibrating through him, a constant reminder that he was connected to something bigger than himself. "What happens now?" he asked. Grip Hook's smile widened. "Now, Lord Peverell, we begin to reclaim what is yours." The next few hours were a blur of information. Grip Hook explained the history of the Peverell line, tracing it back to ancient times, when the family had been one of the most powerful in the magical world. They were the inventors of the Deathly Hallows, the 3 legendary objects that had been passed down through the ages. The ring was one of them, the resurrection stone, but there was more to the inheritance than just the ring. There were vaults, vast, sprawling vaults filled with gold and priceless treasures. There was a manor, hidden away in the countryside, that had been sealed for centuries. There were legal rights and privileges that came with being the head of an ancient house. And there was something else. Something that Grip Hook called a test. "The Peverell magic has been waiting for you," Grip Hook said. "It will not transfer to you fully unless you prove yourself worthy. The first test is simple. You must claim what is yours. You must stand up to those who have wronged you. I don't understand, Harry said. What do you mean? Who has wronged me? Griphook's eyes glittered. The Dursleys. They have kept you from your legacy, abused you, starved you. The law of the ancient houses allows you to demand restitution. You could evict them from their home, take control of their property, leave them with nothing. Harry was silent, thinking. He had dreamed of a way out of number 4 for as long as he could remember. But he had never imagined this, never imagined that he could actually take the house from them, make them suffer the way he had suffered. But even as he thought it, something stopped him. Revenge felt good in the abstract, but when he imagined Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon being thrown out onto the street, it didn't feel as satisfying as he had expected. I don't want revenge, he said slowly. I want to be safe. I want to know who I am. I want a place where I belong. Griphook studied him for a long moment. That is a wise answer, he said. And it will serve you well. But you must still act. You cannot leave things as they are. What do I need to do? The goblin reached into his desk again and pulled out a parchment covered in legal-looking writing. This is a formal notice of eviction. It is legally binding under both magical and muggle law. All you need to do is sign it. Harry stared at the parchment. It felt momentous, a turning point in his life that he had never expected. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. I'm only 5 years old. I'm just a kid. Griphook nodded. You are young. But you are also the lord of an ancient house. In our world, titles do not come with age requirements. You are the head of the family, and the family magic recognizes you as such. But what if I make a mistake? What if I do something wrong? Then you learn from it, Griphook said. That is all any of us can do. Harry took a deep breath, then nodded. Okay. I'll sign. Griphook handed him a quill, an actual quill with a sharp nib that glowed faintly, and guided him to the signature line. Harry took the quill in his small hand, the weight of it unfamiliar but somehow right. And he signed his name. The moment the quill touched the parchment, the ink glowed bright gold. The parchment itself seemed to absorb the light, and then it was done. The contract was sealed. The eviction notice is filed, Griphook said. Within the hour, the Dursleys will be removed from number 4, Privet Drive. The property will be transferred into your name. Harry felt a strange sensation, a mixture of relief and guilt and something that might have been hope. He thought about the Dursleys, about the life he had left behind. It was not a happy life. It was a life of fear and hunger and loneliness. But it was the only life he had known. What happens to them, he asked. Where do they go? That is not your concern, Griphook said firmly. They have resources. They will not be left on the street. And they will no longer be a threat to you. Harry nodded slowly, accepting that. It felt strange to be the one in control, to be the one making decisions. He wasn't used to having power. He wasn't sure he even knew what to do with it. But he was going to learn. There is something else, Griphook said. Your parents, they left you more than just property. They left you their legacy. Their protection. They died for you, Lord Peverell. And their deaths are not without meaning. Harry's throat tightened. I don't remember them. No, the goblin said softly. You were too young. But I can tell you about them. If you want to know. Yes, Harry said, the word coming out in a choked whisper. Yes, please. I want to know everything. And so Griphook told him. He told him about James Potter, a young man with wild black hair and a mischievous smile, a Quidditch star and a loyal friend. He told him about Lily Potter, a brilliant witch with fiery red hair and a gift for magic that was rare. And powerful. They loved you, Griphook said. More than anything in the world. They died to protect you. Harry was crying, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. He had never cried in front of anyone before, he had learned that lesson too well, but it didn't feel wrong now. It felt necessary. What happened to them, he asked. Who killed them? Griphook was quiet for a moment. You are too young for that name, he said. When you are older, when you have grown in your power, I will tell you. But for now, know this, they were heroes. They fought against the darkness and they died for what they believed in. And you survived. Harry thought about that, the weight of it settling on his young shoulders. He was the son of heroes. He was the heir of an ancient house. He carried power within him that he didn't even understand. And he was determined to learn. To grow. To become worthy of the legacy he had been given. Where do I go now, he asked. What happens next? Griphook smiled. First, he said, we must secure the Peverell vaults. They have been closed for centuries, awaiting the true heir. And then, Lord Peverell, we must begin your education. Harry smiled back, a tentative expression that felt strange on his face. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone. The vaults were deeper than anything Harry had ever imagined. Griphook led him on a cart that raced through the underground tunnels, weaving through a labyrinth of stone and fire that stretched beneath the streets of London. Harry clung to the sides, his heart racing as they sped through the darkness. They passed vault after vault, each one sealed with massive doors and intricate locks. Some were old, covered in moss and dust. Others were new, gleaming with freshly polished metal. The deeper the vault, the older the family, Griphook explained. The Peverells are among the oldest of the old. Your vault is at the very bottom. Harry wasn't sure he believed him. But as the cart descended further and further, the temperature dropping, the air growing thinner, he began to suspect that Griphook was telling the truth. Finally, they stopped. In front of them was a vault that dwarfed all the others. The door was made of solid silver, covered in carvings that shifted and moved in the torchlight. Harry could make out figures, men and women, animals and monsters, all frozen in a dance of death and rebirth. The Peverell vault, Griphook said. Sealed for 3 centuries. How do we open it? Harry asked. Griphook turned to him, his expression serious. You open it. It is keyed to your blood. All you need to do is touch the door. Harry took a deep breath, then stepped forward. He reached out his hand, his fingers brushing the cold silver surface. The moment he touched the door, there was a pulse of light. The carvings on the door began to move, faster and faster, until the whole surface of the vault was glowing with golden light. Harry could feel the magic thrumming through him, a connection being made between him and the legacy of his ancestors. The door swung open. Harry peered inside, his breath catching in his throat. The vault was vast, the size of a cathedral, its walls lined with floor-to-ceiling shelves. And on those shelves were treasures beyond Harry's wildest imagination. Gold coins, piles and piles of them, glittering in the candlelight. Gemstones of every color, uncut and raw. Weapons and armor, ornate and ancient. Books, hundreds of them, their spines glowing with the light of old magic. It was overwhelming. It was impossible. It was magnificent. This is all mine? Harry asked, his voice barely a whisper. No, Lord Peverell, Griphook said, a hint of amusement in his voice. This is just a fraction of what is yours. There are more vaults. There is the manor. There are holdings and properties and investments that span the length of the magical world. You are, by any measure, one of the wealthiest individuals in existence. Harry felt dizzy. He had spent his entire life being told that he was worthless, a burden, a drain on resources. To learn that he was actually wealthy, powerful, and connected to a legacy of ancient magic, it was a lot to process. I don't know what to do, he admitted. I don't know how to be a lord. You will learn, Griphook said. The magic will guide you. And I will be here to advise you. But first, there is something you must do. What? Griphook gestured to the shelves of books. You must choose. The Peverell line was known for its mastery of 3 types of magic. The first is transfiguration, the ability to change the form and nature of objects and beings. The second is charms, the ability to enchant and bewitch. And the third is something else entirely. Something darker. Harry felt a cold shiver run down his spine. What do you mean? Darker? The Peverells were not afraid of the darker arts, Griphook said. They believed that all magic could be used for good or ill, and that it was the intent of the user that mattered. But you should know, the legacy of the Peverells is not without its dangers. The magic you will inherit is powerful, and it can be used for good or evil. The choice is yours. Harry thought about that for a long moment. He thought about the Dursleys, about the life he had left behind. He thought about his parents, about the sacrifice they had made. He thought about the power that was now his to control. I want to be good, he said finally. I want to honor my parents' legacy. I want to use this power to protect people, not to hurt them. Griphook nodded slowly, a look of approval in his eyes. That is a noble goal, Lord Peverell. And I believe you can achieve it. But you must be patient. You must be willing to learn. You must be willing to grow. I am, Harry said. I'll do whatever it takes. Griphook reached out and placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. Then let us begin. As they made their way out of the vaults, Harry felt like he was walking on a cloud. The reality of his situation was beginning to sink in, and it was both exhilarating and terrifying. He was no longer just Harry Potter, the unwanted boy who lived in a cupboard. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. He had vaults full of gold and magic waiting for him. He had a future that was brighter than anything he had ever imagined. But even as he celebrated his newfound fortunes, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something darker waiting in the shadows. The goblin's words echoed in his mind, the name of the wizard who had killed his parents, the dark magic that had been involved. The mystery of his parents' murder was still unresolved. And Harry had a sinking feeling that it wouldn't be long before it came back to haunt him. The cart pulled to a stop at the main hall of the bank, and Harry climbed out, feeling the weight of the ring on his finger. It was a constant reminder of who he was and what he was meant to become. Griphook escorted him to a quiet office, where a large portrait hung on the wall. The portrait showed a man with black hair and green eyes, a man who looked almost like Harry, except older. Lord Peverell, the man said, his voice warm. I have been waiting for you. Harry stared at the portrait, his heart racing. Who are you? I am Ignatius Peverell, the man said. Your great-great-great-grandfather. I was the lord of this house before you. Harry didn't know what to say. He had never met any of his ancestors, never even known they existed. To see one now, speaking to him from a portrait, was overwhelming. Why are you here? He asked. What do you want? The portrait smiled. I am here to help you, young lord. The Peverells have always been guardians of ancient knowledge, and that knowledge has been passed down through generations. I am here to guide you, to teach you what you need to know. Harry nodded slowly. I don't know anything, he admitted. I don't know about magic. I don't know about lordship. I don't know about anything. That is why I am here, Ignatius said. You have the potential to be great, Harry. You have the blood of the Peverells in your veins. But potential without knowledge is nothing. You must be willing to learn. I am, Harry said. I want to learn everything. Ignatius smiled again. Then let us begin. But first, he paused, his expression growing serious, there is something you need to know. Something about your parents' murder. Harry's blood went cold. What is it? The wizard who killed them, Ignatius said, he is still alive. He is still powerful. And he is still looking for you. Harry felt his heart stop. He had thought his parents' deaths were an accident, a tragedy that he was too young to remember. But to learn that their murderer was still out there, still hunting him. He will find you, Ignatius said. It is only a matter of time. But you don't have to face him alone. You have the legacy of the Peverells at your disposal. You have allies and resources that he cannot imagine. And you will teach me, Harry said, his voice firm. You will teach me to be strong enough to face him. Ignatius nodded. I will teach you, Harry. But you must be willing to learn. You must be willing to face the darkness within yourself. The Peverell power is not just about magic, it's about courage. It's about standing up for what is right, even when it's hard. Harry nodded, the weight of his destiny settling on his young shoulders. He had a long road ahead of him. There was so much to learn, so much to overcome. But for the first time in his life, he felt ready for the challenge. The portrait smiled again, and Harry could see the same strength in Ignatius's eyes that he felt growing within himself. Then let us begin, Lord Peverell, the portrait said. Your future awaits you. Harry looked at the ring on his finger, at the promise of everything that was to come. The Dursleys were gone. The cupboard was gone. The life of fear and hunger was over. In its place was something new. Something magical. Something that made Harry feel, for the first time, like he was exactly where he belonged. Okay, he said, his voice steady. I'm ready. The hours that followed were a blur of discovery. Ignatius Peverell's portrait spoke to Harry at length, explaining the history of the Peverell line and the nature of the magic that awaited him. The Peverells had been a family of innovators, pushing the boundaries of magic and exploring realms that others feared. You must understand, Ignatius said, that the Peverells were not always popular. Our pursuit of ancient magic made us enemies. There were those who sought to use our knowledge for their own purposes, and there were those who feared what we might discover. Harry nodded, absorbing the information. What kind of magic did you pursue? Ignatius's eyes glittered. The kind that most people would call dark. Necromancy, immortality, the creation of magical artifacts of incredible power. He paused. The Deathly Hallows were our greatest achievement, and our greatest folly. Harry thought about the ring on his finger, about the resurrection stone that had been passed down through his family. The Hallows, he said. They're real. Very real, Ignatius said. And very dangerous. The cloak, the stone, the wand, all three are imbued with power that mortal wizards were not meant to possess. The Peverells created them, and the Peverells have guarded them for centuries. Harry looked at the ring again, feeling its weight. And now they're mine. You are the heir of the Peverells. You have inherited the Hallows. But you must be careful, Harry. The Hallows attract power. They attract enemies. There are those who would kill for them, who would stop at nothing to possess them. Harry felt a cold shiver run down his spine. It was too much, this weight of responsibility. He was just a boy. He had never wanted any of this. But the magic had chosen him, and he couldn't walk away. What do I do? He asked. How do I use the Hallows? Ignatius's expression grew grave. You don't. Not yet. The magic is too powerful, too dangerous. You must grow in your own strength first. You must master the basics of Peverell magic before you can even attempt to use the Hallows. Harry nodded, accepting this. Then teach me, he said. Teach me everything. The portrait smiled. Patience, young lord. We will begin with the foundations. The Peverells were masters of many forms of magic, but the most important is the one that ties all others together. It is the magic of intent. Intent? Magic is not just about words and wand movements, Ignatius explained. It is about will. It is about what you want to achieve and how badly you want it. The Peverells learned to shape their intent into power, to control magic with their thoughts alone. Harry frowned. I don't think I can do that. I'm just a kid. Ignatius laughed. Kid or not, you have the blood of the Peverells. And that blood carries the potential to do great things. But you must be patient. You must be willing to learn. I am, Harry said firmly. I'll do whatever it takes. Ignatius nodded, satisfied. Good. Then let us begin with the simplest of exercises. Sit down. Close your eyes. Feel the magic inside you. Harry obeyed, sitting down on the stone floor of the vault and closing his eyes. He tried to feel the magic that Ignatius had spoken of, but all he felt was the cold stone beneath him and the weight of the ring on his finger. Don't force it, Ignatius's voice came. Just let it happen. Let yourself be receptive. Harry tried to relax, letting his thoughts drift. Slowly, gradually, he began to feel something. A warmth, spreading from his chest. A hum, like the sound of distant music. A presence, ancient and powerful, that wrapped around him like a cocoon. He opened his eyes, gasping. I felt it, he said. I felt something. Ignatius smiled. That was the Peverell magic, awakening within you. It has been waiting for you, Harry. It is part of you now. Harry looked at his hands, at the faint glow that seemed to emanate from his skin. He had never felt anything like this, the power, the connection, the sense of belonging. Now, Ignatius said, we begin. Over the next few hours, Harry learned more than he had ever imagined possible. Ignatius guided him through the basics of Peverell magic, teaching him to tap into the ancient power that flowed through his veins. It wasn't easy. The magic was old and complex, and Harry struggled to understand the concepts that Ignatius was explaining. But he was determined. He was determined to be worthy of the legacy he had inherited. And slowly, gradually, he began to make progress. By the time the goblins returned to check on him, Harry had managed to light a candle with a wave of his hand. It was a small achievement, but it felt monumental. You are a natural, Ignatius said, his voice full of pride. The Peverell blood runs strong in you. Harry smiled, a real smile, the kind he had never felt before. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had a place in the world. Thank you, he said. Thank you for everything. Ignatius nodded. You have a long road ahead of you, Harry. But you are not alone. You never will be. Harry looked at the ring on his finger, at the symbols that marked him as the heir of the ancient House of Peverell. He thought about his parents, about the sacrifice they had made. He thought about the Dursleys, about the life he had left behind. And he thought about the future, about all the possibilities that lay before him. I'm ready, he said. I'm ready for whatever comes next. As he said the words, the ring on his finger pulsed with golden light, and Harry felt a surge of power coursing through him. The magic of the Peverells was truly awake, and it was stronger than he had ever imagined. He was no longer just Harry Potter, the unwanted boy who lived in a cupboard. He was Harry Peverell, the lord of an ancient house, the inheritor of a legacy that spanned centuries. And the world would never be the same. Chapter 2, The Lordship Restored. The goblin cart raced through the tunnels beneath London, its wheels screeching against the stone tracks as it carried Harry deeper into the earth than he had ever been before. The torches lining the walls blurred past in streaks of orange and gold, casting dancing shadows across his small face. Harry gripped the sides of the cart, his knuckles white, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Griphook sat beside him, his long fingers wrapped around the cart's controls, his beady eyes fixed on the path ahead. The goblin had been silent since they had left the Peverell vault, lost in thought, his expression unreadable. Harry didn't mind the silence. It gave him time to process everything that had happened. The blood test. The ring. The revelation that he was the heir to an ancient magical legacy. The knowledge that his parents had been murdered, not killed in a car crash, and that their killer was still out there. It was a lot for a 5-year-old to absorb. But Harry had never been an ordinary 5-year-old. The years of neglect and abuse at the Dursleys had forced him to grow up fast, to develop a resilience that most children his age didn't possess. And now, that resilience was being put to the test. Where are we going? Harry asked, his voice barely audible above the roar of the cart. Griphook glanced at him, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. To the Peverell Manor. It's time you saw your true home. Harry's heart skipped a beat. Home. The word felt foreign to him, a concept that had always been out of reach. The Dursleys' house had never been home. The cupboard had never been home. Home was something that other people had, something that Harry had always been denied. But now, apparently, he had a manor. A real manor, with walls and rooms and a history that stretched back centuries. The cart began to slow, and Harry could see a door up ahead. It was massive, made of black iron, covered in the same interlocking triangles that adorned his signet ring. The entrance to the Peverell domain, Griphook explained. It's been sealed for generations. Only the rightful heir can open it. Harry swallowed hard. How do I open it? Griphook gestured to the ring on Harry's finger. Just touch the door. The magic will recognize you. Harry took a deep breath and climbed out of the cart, his legs shaky from the ride. He walked toward the iron door, his small feet echoing on the stone floor. The door loomed above him, massive and imposing, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to writhe in the flickering torchlight. He reached out his hand, his fingers trembling slightly. The ring on his finger began to glow, a soft golden light that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. He touched the door. The effect was immediate. The carvings on the door began to move, swirling and shifting, forming patterns that Harry couldn't quite follow. The iron began to glow, heating up until it was almost too hot to touch, but Harry couldn't pull his hand away. The magic was pulling him, connecting him, making him part of the door itself. And then, with a grinding sound that echoed through the tunnels, the door swung open. Beyond it was a world of light and color and magic. Harry stepped through the doorway, and his breath caught in his throat. He was standing at the top of a hill overlooking a valley that seemed to stretch on forever. The sky above was a deep purple, studded with stars that twinkled like diamonds. The grass beneath his feet was soft and green, dotted with flowers of every color imaginable. In the distance, he could see a forest, its trees towering into the sky, their leaves shimmering with an inner light. And at the center of the valley, surrounded by gardens and fountains, stood the manor. It was a castle, there was no other word for it. A sprawling complex of towers and turrets, its walls made of pale stone that seemed to glow with an inner warmth. The windows were tall and arched, filled with stained glass that caught the starlight and threw rainbows across the grounds. A massive gate stood open, welcoming him, inviting him in. This is mine. Harry whispered, his voice full of wonder. Griphook had come up behind him, his expression uncharacteristically soft. Yes, Lord Peverell. This is yours. It has been waiting for you for a very long time. Harry took a step forward, then another. The grass was soft beneath his feet, and the air smelled of flowers and magic. It was like a dream, a beautiful, impossible dream. And then he felt it. A presence, warm and welcoming, washing over him like a gentle wave. The magic of the manor was reaching out to him, recognizing him, embracing him. The wards, Griphook said. They are attuned to your bloodline. The manor knows you are its master. Harry closed his eyes, letting the sensation wash over him. It felt like coming home, a feeling he had never experienced before. The magic wrapped around him, comforted him, made him feel safe for the first time in his life. He opened his eyes and began to walk down the hill, toward the manor. Griphook followed, his footsteps silent on the soft grass. As they approached the gate, Harry saw that it was even more impressive up close. The ironwork was delicate and intricate, depicting scenes of battles and triumphs, of love and loss. The Peverell crest was emblazoned on every surface, the interlocking triangles that Harry had come to recognize as his own. The gate swung open as he approached, and Harry stepped into the courtyard beyond. It was a garden, a vast and beautiful garden filled with flowers and trees and fountains that sparkled in the starlight. There were statues scattered throughout, figures frozen in stone. Their faces peaceful and serene. The ancestors, Griphook said. Every Peverell who has ever lived has a statue in these gardens. It is a tradition, a way of honoring those who came before. Harry walked among the statues, looking at the faces of his ancestors. They looked like him, he realized. They had the same unruly black hair, the same green eyes, the same defiant expression. He stopped in front of a statue of a man who was particularly striking. He was tall and handsome, with a powerful build and a stern expression. In his hand, he held a wand that was unlike any Harry had ever seen, long and gnarled, almost like the branch of a tree. Antioch Peverell, Griphook said. The eldest brother. He created the Elder Wand. Harry stared at the statue, feeling a strange connection to the man who had created one of the most powerful magical artifacts in existence. What happened to him? Griphook's expression grew grim. He was murdered. His wand was taken from him, and he was killed in his sleep. It is a cautionary tale, Lord Peverell. Power attracts enemies. Harry nodded slowly, the weight of those words settling on his young shoulders. He had already experienced the dark side of power, the murder of his parents, the attempt on his own life. He knew that the path he was on was fraught with danger. But he couldn't turn back now. He didn't want to turn back. He continued through the garden, past more statues, until he reached the entrance to the manor. The door was made of oak, so old and dark that it was almost black. It was covered in the same carvings that adorned the gate, the interlocking triangles that symbolized the Peverell line. Harry reached out and pushed the door open. The interior of the manor was breathtaking. The entrance hall was vast, its ceiling so high that Harry had to crane his neck to see the top. Chandeliers made of crystal and silver hung from above, casting a warm glow across the room. The walls were covered in tapestries, depicting scenes from Peverell history. A grand staircase swept up to the upper floors, its banisters carved from wood that seemed to move and breathe. And everywhere, there was magic. It sparkled in the air, tiny motes of light that danced around Harry as he entered. It hummed in the walls, a low vibration that he could feel in his bones. It wrapped around him, embraced him, welcomed him home. "Welcome to Peverell Manor, Lord Peverell," a voice said. Harry spun around. There, standing in the doorway, was a figure that he hadn't noticed before. It was a man, tall and thin, with silver hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes the color of pale gray. He was wearing robes of deep blue, embroidered with the Peverell crest, and he was smiling warmly at Harry. Who are you?" Harry asked, his voice uncertain. "I am Alistair," the man said, bowing deeply. "The Peverell house elf." Harry blinked. "House elf?" Alistair nodded. "I have served the House of Peverell for more than 5 centuries, my lord. I was bound to the magic of this manor when I was barely more than a hatchling. I have been waiting for a Peverell to return for a very long time." Harry didn't know what to say. He had never had a servant before, had never even imagined having one. It was strange, the idea that someone would be there to take care of him, to serve him. "I don't know what to do," he admitted. This is all new to me." Alistair smiled gently. "That is perfectly understandable, my lord. You are very young, and you have been kept from your heritage. But I am here to help you. I am here to guide you." Harry nodded, a wave of gratitude washing over him. It was so strange, this feeling of being cared for. He had never experienced it before, and it was overwhelming. "Thank you," he said, his voice soft. Alistair bowed again. "It is my honor. Now, my lord, may I show you to your chambers? You must be tired. It has been a long day." Harry nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. The adrenaline that had been keeping him going was fading, leaving him feeling drained and weary. He followed Alistair up the grand staircase, his small feet sinking into the soft carpet. The stairs wound up and up, past paintings that moved and murmured, past doors that glowed with magical light. Finally, they reached a door that was different from the rest. It was made of dark wood, covered in the interlocking triangles that Harry had come to recognize as his own. "This is the master bedroom," Alistair said. "It was your parents' room. And now it is yours." Harry's breath caught in his throat. His parents' room. They had slept here, lived here, loved here. He had never known them, never had a chance to know them. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was vast, bigger than the entire downstairs of number 4. A massive 4-poster bed dominated the center, its curtains made of deep green velvet. The walls were lined with bookshelves, filled with ancient tomes and glowing manuscripts. A fireplace crackled with green flames, casting a warm glow across the room. And on the wall, above the bed, hung a portrait. It was a woman, beautiful, with fiery red hair and green eyes that sparkled with intelligence and warmth. She was holding a baby, a small bundle with a shock of black hair and a contented expression. Harry's breath caught in his throat. It was his mother. And the baby was him. He walked toward the portrait, his feet carrying him forward without conscious thought. He reached up, touching the frame, feeling the brush of his mother's painted cheek. "Mum," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. The portrait seemed to shimmer, and suddenly, the woman was looking at him. Really looking at him, her eyes filled with love and pain and longing. "Harry," she said, her voice soft and beautiful. "My little Harry. You've grown so much." Harry's tears spilled over, rolling down his cheeks. "Mum. Can you hear me?" The portrait nodded, her expression heartbreakingly sad. "I can hear you, my darling. I've been waiting for you. I've been watching over you." "How?" Harry asked. "How is this possible?" "The portrait is enchanted," Lily said. "It contains a fragment of my consciousness. I'm not truly here, but I can talk to you. I can see you. I can love you." Harry sobbed, his small body shaking with emotion. He had never heard his mother's voice before, had never known what she looked like. Now, he could see her, hear her, feel her love. "I've missed you," he said. "I've missed you so much." Lily's eyes glistened with tears. "And I've missed you, Harry. Every single day. I've watched you grow from afar, seen you struggle, seen you suffer. I wanted so much to help you, but I couldn't. The wards on the Dursleys' house were too strong." "The Dursleys," Harry said, his voice hardening. They hated me, Mum. They called me a freak. They locked me in a cupboard." Lily's expression grew fierce, her eyes flashing with anger. "I know. I saw it all. And I wanted to tear them apart, but I couldn't. The magic was too strong. But now you're here. Now you're safe." Harry nodded, wiping his tears away. "They're gone now. Griphook helped me evict them." Lily smiled, a soft, proud smile. "You did that? You stood up for yourself." "Griphook helped," Harry said. "But I signed the eviction notice. I was the one who did it." Lily's smile grew wider. "I'm so proud of you, Harry. I knew you had it in you. The Peverell blood is strong, even after all these years." Harry felt a surge of warmth at her words. "Mum, I have so many questions. I don't understand anything. I don't know what I'm supposed to do or what's expected of me." Lily nodded, her expression growing serious. "I know, darling. And I will help you as much as I can. But you must understand something. I'm not really here. I'm just a memory, a fragment. I can give you advice, but I can't protect you." Harry swallowed hard. "I know. But it's still good to talk to you. It's still good to hear your voice." Lily reached out, her painted hand hovering near his cheek. "I love you, Harry. I love you more than anything in this world. And I believe in you. I believe you can do great things." Harry nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "Now," Lily said, her voice taking on a practical tone, "you must be exhausted. It's been a long day. You should rest." Harry nodded, finally realizing how tired he was. "Will you be here tomorrow?" Lily smiled. "I'll always be here, Harry. This portrait is part of the manor's magic. As long as the manor stands, I'll be here." Harry smiled back, a real smile, the kind he had never felt before. "Good night, Mum. Good night, my darling. Sleep well." Harry climbed onto the massive bed, sinking into the soft mattress and the plush pillows. For the first time in his life, he was sleeping in a real bed, in a real room, in a real home. And his mother was watching over him. He fell asleep within minutes, his dreams full of magic and hope and love. Harry slept for 14 hours. When he woke, the morning light was streaming through the windows, casting golden rectangles across the floor. For a moment, he didn't know where he was. The room was unfamiliar, the bed too soft, the pillows too plush. And then he remembered. The Peverell manor. His mother's portrait. The life he had left behind. He sat up, rubbing his eyes, and looked around the room. It was even more beautiful in the daylight. The sun streamed through the tall windows, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the air. The books on the shelves glowed with ancient magic, their spines seeming to move and breathe. And on the wall above the bed, his mother's portrait was sleeping. Her eyes were closed, her expression peaceful. Harry felt a surge of emotion. She was real. She was here. He wasn't alone anymore. He climbed out of bed, his bare feet sinking into the plush carpet, and padded over to the window. The view was incredible. The garden stretched out below, filled with flowers and fountains and statues. In the distance, he could see the forest, its trees stretching up toward the sky. He had never seen anything so beautiful. A soft knock at the door made him turn. "Come in," he called, his voice still rough with sleep. The door opened, and Alastair entered, carrying a tray laden with food. "Good morning, my lord. I hope you slept well." Harry nodded, his stomach growling at the sight of the food. "Yes, thank you." Alastair set the tray down on a small table near the window. "I've brought you breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast, and fresh fruit. And tea, of course." Harry's mouth watered. It was more food than he had ever been given at the Dursleys. "Thank you, Alastair." Alastair bowed. "It's my pleasure, my lord. When you're finished eating, Griphook would like to see you in the library. There are matters that require your attention." Harry nodded, already reaching for a slice of toast. "Okay. I'll be there soon." He ate quickly, savoring every bite. The food was delicious, the best he had ever tasted. It felt strange, being served like this, but it also felt right. Like this was how things were supposed to be. When he was finished, he dressed in clothes that Alastair had laid out for him, robes of deep blue, embroidered with the Peverell crest. They fit perfectly, as if they had been made for him. He looked at himself in the mirror, his reflection unfamiliar. The boy staring back at him looked different from the one who had lived in a cupboard. He looked healthier, happier. He looked like a lord. Harry smiled, a real smile, and left the room. The library was vast, the largest room Harry had ever seen. The walls were lined with bookshelves that stretched up to the ceiling, filled with ancient tomes and glowing manuscripts. A fireplace crackled in the corner, casting warm light across the room. Griphook was sitting at a massive desk, surrounded by stacks of parchment and quills. He looked up as Harry entered, his expression unreadable. "Good morning, Lord Peverell. I trust you slept well." Harry nodded. "Yes, thank you. Alastair said you wanted to see me." Griphook gestured to a chair. "Sit down. There are things we need to discuss." Harry sat, his heart pounding with anticipation. "What kind of things?" Griphook steepled his long fingers. "The eviction notice has been filed. The Dursleys have been removed from number 4, Privet Drive. The property is now officially yours." Harry felt a complicated mix of emotions. Relief, certainly. But also something else, something that might have been guilt. The Dursleys were bad people, cruel people, but they had been the only family he had ever known. "What happened to them?" he asked. "Where did they go?" "They have been relocated to a small flat in London," Griphook said. "It is not luxurious, but it is adequate. They will survive." Harry nodded slowly. "Good. I don't want them to suffer. I just wanted them to leave me alone." Griphook studied him for a moment, his expression unreadable. "That is a generous attitude, Lord Peverell. I would not have blamed you if you had wished them ill." Harry shook his head. "I don't hate them. I mean, I do, but I don't want to be like them. I don't want to be cruel." Griphook's expression softened slightly. "That is a wise and mature sentiment. You are proving yourself worthy of the Peverell legacy." Harry didn't know what to say to that, so he changed the subject. You said there were other matters? Things that need my attention. Griphook nodded, reaching for a stack of parchment. Yes. The Peverell holdings are extensive, and they require management. There are properties, investments, and legal matters that must be addressed. As the head of the house, these are now your responsibilities. Harry felt a flicker of panic. But I don't know anything about that. I'm just a kid. Griphook's lips curved into a thin smile. You are young, yes. But you have resources. I am here to advise you, and I will manage the day-to-day affairs. But ultimately, the decisions are yours. Harry took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Okay. What kind of decisions? Griphook spread the parchment out on the desk. First, there is the matter of your education. As the heir of an ancient house, you are entitled to a private tutor. I recommend that we find someone who can teach you the basics of magic, wand work, potions, history. Harry nodded. That sounds good. I want to learn everything I can. Second, Griphook continued, there is the matter of your safety. The wizard who killed your parents is still at large. He will eventually learn that you have claimed your inheritance, and he will come for you. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. What do I need to do? The wards on the manor are strong, Griphook said. They have been reinforced by centuries of Peverell magic. No one can enter without your permission. You are safe here. But when you leave the grounds, you will need protection. Protection? I will assign a goblin guard to you, Griphook said. Goblins are powerful fighters, and they are fiercely loyal to their employers. You will never be alone. Harry nodded, feeling a little better. Thank you. And third, Griphook said, his expression growing serious, there is the matter of your status. What do you mean? As the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell, you have certain privileges and responsibilities. You are entitled to a seat on the Wisengamot, the governing body of magical Britain. But you are also subject to their scrutiny. There are those who will try to challenge your claim, to undermine your authority. Harry frowned. Why would they do that? Griphook's eyes glittered. Power, Lord Peverell. Power is the most coveted thing in the magical world. There are families who have spent centuries trying to claim the Peverell inheritance. They will not give up their ambitions easily. Harry felt a surge of defiance. Let them try. I'm not going to let anyone take what's mine. Griphook nodded approvingly. That is the right attitude. You will face challenges, Lord Peverell. But I believe you have the strength to overcome them. Harry thought about his parents, about the legacy they had left him. He thought about the Dursleys, about the years of abuse and neglect. He had survived everything life had thrown at him so far. He would survive this too. What do I need to do? He asked. How do I start? Griphook smiled, a thin, calculating expression. The first step is to reclaim your inheritance legally. There are documents that must be signed, rituals that must be performed. Once that is done, your claim will be unassailable. Harry nodded. Then let's do it. Let's reclaim my inheritance. The legal proceedings were more complex than Harry had anticipated. For the next several days, he spent hours in the library with Griphook, signing documents and learning about the intricacies of magical law. The Peverell inheritance was vast, encompassing not just wealth and property, but also ancient rights and privileges. As the head of an ancient house, Harry was entitled to vote in the Wisengamot. He was entitled to a seat in the Ministry's Department of Mysteries. He was entitled to access to restricted magical texts and artifacts. And he was entitled to the protection of the goblins, a privilege that had been granted to the Peverells centuries ago. The goblins have long been allies of the Peverells, Griphook explained. Your ancestors treated us with respect, and we have honored that relationship for generations. As long as you remain true to that spirit, we will stand by you. Harry nodded, feeling grateful. He had never had allies before. It was a strange feeling, having people on his side. But it was also a responsibility. He would have to earn their loyalty, to prove himself worthy of their trust. I understand, he said. I won't let you down. Griphook's expression softened slightly. I believe you won't, Lord Peverell. You have already shown great wisdom for one so young. The days passed in a blur of paperwork and meetings. Harry learned about the Peverell properties, manors in Scotland, estates in France, a castle in the mountains of Switzerland. He learned about the investments, the magical businesses that had been established by his ancestors. He learned about the legal rights, the ancient privileges that had been granted to the Peverells by generations of magical monarchs. It was overwhelming. But Harry was determined to master it. He would not let his legacy slip through his fingers. And then, one evening, Griphook called him to the library for a meeting that would change everything. Lord Peverell, the goblin said, his voice unusually serious. There is something you must know. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. What is it? The Ministry of Magic has been alerted to your claim, Griphook said. They have demanded proof that you are the rightful heir. Harry's heart began to race. What do they need? Griphook's eyes glittered. They need to see you, Lord Peverell. They need to verify your identity. They are sending a delegation to the manor tomorrow. Harry felt a surge of panic. A delegation? What do they want? They want to challenge your claim, Griphook said bluntly. There are those in the ministry who believe that a 5-year-old cannot be the lord of an ancient house. They will try to deny you your inheritance. Harry felt a surge of anger. But I am the heir. The blood test proved it. The ring proves it. The ring is a powerful symbol, Griphook said. But it is not the only proof. There are rituals that must be performed, ceremonies that must be witnessed. The ministry will demand that you prove yourself. Harry took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. What do I need to do? Griphook smiled, a thin, predatory expression. You need to show them who you are, Lord Peverell. You need to show them the power of the Peverell blood. Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. I will. I'll show them exactly who I am. The next morning, Harry woke early, his heart pounding with anticipation. He had spent the night in his mother's portrait, talking to her about the upcoming meeting. She had been supportive, encouraging, full of advice. Be confident, Harry, she had said. You are a Peverell. You have the power of your ancestors flowing through your veins. They can't take that away from you. Harry had taken comfort in those words. He had repeated them to himself as he dressed, as he ate his breakfast, as he walked to the library to meet the ministry delegation. The delegation was waiting for him when he arrived. They were 3 wizards, all of them old and important looking, dressed in robes of deep purple and gold. The leader of the group was a tall man with white hair and a stern expression. He was holding a silver staff, and he was looking at Harry with undisguised suspicion. Lord Peverell, he said, his voice cold. I am Alastair Vance, Undersecretary to the Minister for Magic. These are my colleagues, Gregory Winters and Penelope Shaw. We are here to verify your claim to the Peverell inheritance. Harry felt his palms sweating, but he forced himself to stay calm. I am Harry Peverell. I am the rightful heir to the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. Vance's lips curled into a sneer. You are 5 years old, boy. You cannot possibly understand the responsibilities that come with such a title. Harry felt a flash of anger, but he suppressed it. I understand more than you think. Vance raised an eyebrow. Is that so? Then you won't mind answering a few questions. Harry nodded. I don't mind at all. The next hour was a blur of questions. Vance and his colleagues grilled Harry on the history of the Peverell line, on the properties and holdings, on the ancient rights and privileges. Harry answered every question, his voice steady, his responses precise. He had studied hard with Griphook. He knew the answers. Finally, Vance sat back, his expression unreadable. You are well informed, I'll give you that. But knowledge is not the same as power. Harry felt a surge of defiance. I know that. But I can prove my power. Vance's eyes narrowed. How? Harry reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver dagger. It was ancient, one of the artifacts from the Peverell vault, and it glowed with an inner light. I will perform the ritual of blood, Harry said, his voice steady. I will prove that I am the true heir. Vance's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. The ritual of blood is dangerous. It could kill you if you are not the true heir. Harry smiled, a thin, confident expression. I know. But I am the true heir. And I'm not afraid. The room fell silent. Vance and his colleagues exchanged glances, their expressions uncertain. Very well, Vance said finally. If you wish to perform the ritual, we will witness it. But I warn you, boy, if you fail, the consequences will be severe. Harry nodded, his heart racing. I won't fail. The ritual chamber was deep beneath the manor, in a part of the building that Harry had never seen before. The walls were made of black stone, covered in the interlocking triangles that symbolized the Peverell line. A circle was carved into the floor, its edges glowing with a faint golden light. In the center of the circle stood a small altar, its surface covered in ancient runes. Harry walked to the center of the circle, his heart pounding. He could feel the magic in the air, thick and powerful, pressing in on him from all sides. He pulled the silver dagger from his pocket and held it up. The blade caught the light, gleaming with an inner fire. I, Harry James Potter, he said, his voice ringing through the chamber, do hereby claim the title of Lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. By the blood of my ancestors, I swear that I am the true heir. He drew the blade across his palm, cutting deep into the skin. Blood welled up, bright and red, and dripped onto the altar. The moment his blood touched the stone, the room exploded with light. Golden fire erupted from the altar, wrapping around Harry in a cocoon of warmth and power. He could feel the magic of his ancestors flowing through him, embracing him, welcoming him home. And then, the flames died down, and Harry was left standing in the center of the circle, his hands still bleeding, his heart pounding. The runes on the altar had changed. They were glowing now, pulsing with a steady rhythm, and they had formed a pattern that Harry recognized. By blood, by magic, by right, a voice said. It was ancient, older than the stones, older than the manor itself. The heir is recognized. The lordship is restored. Harry looked up. Vance and his colleagues were staring at him, their faces pale with shock. Impossible, Vance said, his voice barely a whisper. He completed the ritual. I told you, Harry said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion he felt. I am the true heir. Vance's expression shifted, and for a moment, Harry thought he saw something like respect in the old man's eyes. The ritual of blood is the ultimate proof, Vance said. No one can challenge the results. He paused, then bowed his head slightly. Lord Peverell. Harry felt a surge of triumph. He had done it. He had proven himself. But even as he celebrated, a voice in the back of his mind reminded him that this was just the beginning. The challenges were far from over. The wizard who had killed his parents was still out there, and he would come for Harry eventually. But for now, Harry was safe. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And nothing could take that away from him. The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. The ministry. Delegation had left, but their presence had triggered a cascade of events. Word of Harry's claim had spread through the magical world, and the response was mixed. Some were excited at the prospect of a new Peverell Lord. Others were suspicious, even hostile. Harry tried not to let it bother him. He had more important things to focus on. The restoration of his inheritance. The training in Peverell magic. The rebuilding of his family's legacy. Alistair and Griphook were by his side every step of the way, guiding him, advising him, helping him navigate the treacherous waters of magical politics. You are doing wonderfully, Lord Peverell, Alistair said one evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and paperwork. You are wise beyond your years. Harry smiled, a tired but genuine expression. I'm just trying to do my best. I don't want to let anyone down. Alistair's expression softened. You won't, my lord. I have faith in you. Harry felt a warmth in his chest at those words. It was good, having people who believed in him. It was good, having a place where he belonged. He looked out the window at the gardens, at the stars that twinkled above. The manor was quiet, peaceful, safe. But even as he relaxed, Harry knew that this peace wouldn't last. The world was full of challenges, full of enemies. He would have to be strong, courageous, ready for whatever came next. He was Harry Peverell, Lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And he would not fail. The final piece of his inheritance was the Peverell family magic. It was an ancient and powerful tradition, passed down through generations of wizards and witches. It was the foundation of the Peverell legacy, the source of their power and prestige. And now, it was Harry's to claim. The ritual of binding was performed in the grand hall of the manor, with Griphook and Alastair as witnesses. Harry stood at the center of the room, his signet ring on his finger, his wand in his hand. The magic flowed through him, ancient and powerful, connecting him to his ancestors and his descendants. He could feel the Peverell blood singing in his veins, could feel the power of the family magic awakening within him. By the blood of the Peverells, by the magic of our ancestors, I claim this legacy as my own, Harry said, his voice steady. I will honor our traditions. I will protect our secrets. I will carry our name into the future. A pulse of golden light erupted from his ring, spreading through the room like a wave. The portraits on the walls stirred, their painted eyes flickering with recognition. Lord Peverell, a voice said. It was his mother's portrait, Lily, her face glowing with pride and love. You have done it. You have fully claimed your inheritance. Harry smiled, tears streaming down his cheeks. I did it, Mum. I did it. Lily's painted hand touched her heart. I am so proud of you, Harry. Your father would be proud too. Harry nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He had done it. He had reclaimed his inheritance. He had restored his family's legacy. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And nothing in the world could change that. Chapter 3, The Last Peverell. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the manor's library, casting long golden rectangles across the ancient wooden floor. Dust motes danced in the beams, swirling lazily as if caught in an invisible current of magic. Harry sat at the massive oak desk, his small hands wrapped around a cup of tea that Alastair had brought him only moments before. The warmth seeped into his fingers, grounding him in the present moment. 3 months had passed since the ritual of blood. 3 months since he had fully claimed his inheritance. 3 months since he had begun to understand what it truly meant to be the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. The library was his favorite room in the manor. It smelled of old parchment and leather. Of dust and ancient magic. The bookshelf stretched up toward the ceiling, so tall that Harry had to crane his neck to see the top. Many of the books were written in languages he couldn't read, their titles shimmering with enchantments that made them seem almost alive. Harry had spent countless hours in this room, reading and studying, trying to absorb as much knowledge as he could. There was so much to learn, so much he didn't know. The Peverell legacy was vast and complex, spanning centuries of magical innovation and power. But today, he wasn't reading. Today, he was waiting. Griphook had sent word that his tutor would be arriving. A real tutor, someone who could teach him the fundamentals of magic. Harry's heart raced with anticipation. He had been practicing on his own, using the books in the library and the guidance of his mother's portrait, but he knew he needed proper instruction. Magic was dangerous, and he couldn't afford to make mistakes. The door to the library swung open, and Alastair stepped inside, his expression formal. My lord, your tutor has arrived. Professor Flitwick, of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Harry's eyes widened. Professor Flitwick? The charms master? Alastair nodded, a hint of a smile on his ancient face. The very same. He has come at the request of the goblins, who vouched for his expertise and discretion. Harry scrambled to his feet, smoothing down his robes. He had read about Professor Flitwick in one of the books on Hogwarts, a half-goblin, half-wizard who was considered one of the finest charms masters in the world. The fact that such a prestigious wizard had agreed to tutor him was almost too much to believe. Professor Flitwick entered the library, and Harry's first impression was of smallness. The professor was barely taller than Harry himself, with silver hair and a kind, wrinkled face that was creased with years of smiling. His eyes, however, were sharp and intelligent, missing nothing. "Lord Peverell," Flitwick said, bowing deeply. "It is an honor to meet you. I have heard a great deal about you." Harry returned the bow, his heart pounding. "The honor is mine, Professor. Thank you for coming." Flitwick straightened up, his eyes twinkling. "When the goblins contacted me and explained the situation, I knew I had to come. A Peverell reclaiming their inheritance after so many centuries, it's the sort of thing that makes history." Harry felt a flush of pride. "I'm just trying to do my best." Flitwick chuckled. "Humility is a good quality, Lord Peverell. But don't sell yourself short. What you've accomplished is remarkable, especially for one so young." Harry didn't know what to say to that, so he changed the subject. "Are you going to teach me charms?" "Among other things," Flitwick said. "The goblins have asked me to give you a comprehensive education in the magical arts. We'll start with the basics, wand work, theory, the fundamentals of spellcasting. And as you progress, we'll move on to more advanced topics." Harry nodded, his excitement barely contained. "When can we start?" Flitwick's smile widened. "Right now, if you're ready." Harry was more than ready. He had been ready for this moment his entire life. The first lesson was held in the Manor's conservatory, a vast room filled with exotic plants that seemed to move and breathe. Sunlight streamed through the glass ceiling, warming the air and making the magical plants glisten with dew. Flitwick had brought his own wand, a slender length of mahogany with a unicorn hair core, and he held it with the ease of long practice. "Before we begin," Flitwick said, "I need to see what you can do. Show me what you've learned so far." Harry felt a flicker of nerves. He had been practicing on his own, but he wasn't sure if he was doing it right. He pulled out his wand, a simple, unassuming wand that he had found in the Peverell vaults, and pointed it at a small flower pot. "Wingardium Leviosa," he said, his voice steady. The flower pot rose into the air, hovering for a moment before drifting gently back down to the ground. Flitwick's eyebrows rose. "Impressive. You've been studying?" Harry nodded. "I've been reading the books in the library. I wanted to be ready." Flitwick smiled, a warm, approving expression. "Your technique is rough, but the intent is there. The spell responded to your will, which is the most important thing." Harry felt a surge of pride. "I've been practicing every day." "I can see that," Flitwick said. "Now, let's work on refining that technique. The key to successful spellcasting is precision, in wand movement, in pronunciation, and in mental focus." The next hour was a blur of instruction. Flitwick was patient and thorough, correcting Harry's grip on his wand, adjusting the angle of his wrist, and drilling him on the proper pronunciation of spells. Harry absorbed every word, his mind racing to keep up with the flood of information. By the end of the lesson, he had successfully cast a Lumos spell, a Reparo spell, and a basic shield charm. His arm ached from the effort, and his head was spinning with new knowledge, but he felt exhilarated. "Excellent work, Lord Peverell," Flitwick said, nodding approvingly. "You have natural talent. With practice, you'll become a powerful wizard." Harry beamed. "Thank you, Professor. I'll keep practicing." Flitwick packed up his supplies, his expression thoughtful. "There's something else I should mention. I've been asked to evaluate your progress and report back to the goblins. They want to know when you'll be ready to face the challenges that lie ahead." Harry's smile faded. "What kind of challenges?" Flitwick's eyes grew serious. "The magical world is not a kind place, Lord Peverell. There are those who will test you, who will try to undermine your authority. You need to be ready for them." Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I will be. I'll work as hard as I need to." Flitwick smiled, a sad, knowing expression. "I believe you will, Lord Peverell. I believe you will." The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of training. Flitwick visited the manor 3 times a week, guiding Harry through the fundamentals of magical theory and practice. They worked on transfiguration, potions, and even the basics of defense against the dark arts. Harry absorbed everything, his mind hungry for knowledge. But the most important lessons were the ones he learned on his own, in the quiet hours of the night. Harry discovered that the Peverell magic was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It was ancient and powerful, deeply connected to the land and the manor. When he meditated in the garden, he could feel the magic of the Peverells flowing through the earth, pulsing like a heartbeat. And he discovered something else: the Peverells had been masters of what they called intent magic. Intent magic was different from ordinary spellcasting. It didn't require words or wand movements. It required only will, and the ability to focus that will into a single, unbreakable point. "It's about knowing what you want," Ignatius Peverell's portrait explained one evening. "And wanting it so badly that the world has no choice but to bend to your desire." Harry was skeptical. "That sounds too easy. Magic can't be that simple." Ignatius chuckled. "It's not simple, Harry. It's the opposite of simple. Intent magic requires absolute clarity of purpose. One moment of doubt, one flicker of hesitation, and the spell fails." Harry thought about that, about all the times he had been unsure of himself. He had spent his entire life doubting his worth, his value, his place in the world. The Dursleys had made sure of that. But now, he was the lord of an ancient house. He had power and wealth and a legacy that stretched back centuries. He had to be confident. He had to be sure. "Teach me," he said. "Teach me how to master intent magic." Ignatius smiled, a proud expression. "I was hoping you would say that." The training was grueling. Harry spent hours in the garden, sitting cross-legged on the grass, trying to focus his will. It was harder than it sounded. His mind kept wandering, distracted by thoughts of the Dursleys, of his parents, of the wizard who had killed them. "Focus," Ignatius's voice echoed in his mind. "Think of something you want, something you desire with every fiber of your being." Harry thought about his parents. He thought about the life they could have had together, the family they could have been. He thought about the years of abuse he had endured at the hands of the Dursleys, the years of loneliness and fear. And then he focused. He focused on the one thing he wanted more than anything else. "I want to be strong," he thought. "I want to be strong enough to protect the people I love." The world around him seemed to shift. The colors grew brighter, the sounds clearer. A hum of power filled the air, and Harry felt his own magic rising to meet it. He opened his eyes. In his hand was a ball of golden light, pulsing with an inner fire. He had done it. He had manifested his intent. "Well done," Ignatius said, his voice full of pride. "You have taken the first step." Harry stared at the ball of light in his hand, his heart racing. It was beautiful, glowing with a warmth that spread through his entire body. "What do I do with it?" he asked. "Whatever you want," Ignatius said. "That's the beauty of intent magic. The power is limited only by your imagination." Harry thought about his mother's portrait, the way she watched over him from the wall. He thought about the Dursleys, the way they had treated him. He thought about the wizard who had killed his parents, the one who was still out there, waiting. He focused his will, and the ball of light shifted, changing shape. It became a shield, translucent and shimmering, surrounding him in a protective cocoon. "The shield of intent," Ignatius said. "One of the most powerful defensive spells in existence. It can withstand almost any attack." Harry felt the warmth of the shield surrounding him, protecting him. For the first time in his life, he felt truly safe. But not everything was peaceful. There were whispers in the magical world, rumors and speculation about the new Peverell Lord. Some of them were positive, praise for the boy who had reclaimed his inheritance, who had stood up to the ministry and proven his worth. But others were not. "The Death Eaters have heard of you," Griphook said one evening, his expression grave. "Lord Voldemort's followers are spreading rumors that you are a threat to their cause." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. "What do they want?" "They want to see you dead," Griphook said bluntly. "You are the symbol of everything they hate, the union of ancient and powerful bloodlines, the legacy of the Peverells, the survival of the boy who lived. They see you as a threat. Harry's hands clenched into fists. I won't let them hurt me. I'm not going to hide from them. Griphook's eyes glittered. That is a brave sentiment, Lord Peverell. But bravery without preparation is foolishness. You need to be ready for when they come. Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. I will be. The training intensified after that. Flitwick pushed him harder, teaching him advanced defensive spells and dueling techniques. Harry practiced until his arms ached and his mind was fogged with exhaustion. But he kept going, driven by a burning need to be strong enough to face whatever came. And he continued to train in intent magic, honing his ability to focus his will and manifest his desires. The Peverell magic was growing stronger within him, awakening to his touch like an ancient beast stirring from a long slumber. One evening, as Harry was practicing in the garden, he felt a strange presence. It was faint, barely there, like a whisper on the edge of his perception. Someone is here, he said, his voice sharp. Alistair appeared at his side, his expression alert. I sense it too, my lord. There is an intruder on the grounds. Harry's heart began to race. He had never faced a real threat before, not like this. The Dursleys had been cruel, but they hadn't been dangerous in the way a Death Eater could be. Where are they? Harry asked, his voice steady despite the fear that churned in his stomach. Alistair closed his eyes, concentrating. At the edge of the grounds. They are trying to breach the wards. Harry felt a surge of anger. The wards of the manor were his protection, the barrier that kept him safe from the dangers of the world. The thought of someone trying to breach them, to invade his home, filled him with rage. Show me, he said. Alistair led him through the manor, past the gardens and the fountains, to the edge of the property. There, shimmering in the twilight, was the ward boundary, a translucent wall of golden light that pulsed with ancient magic. And on the other side of that wall stood 3 figures, their faces hidden by dark cloaks. Death Eaters, Alistair hissed. They've come for you. Harry stared at the figures, his heart pounding. He could feel their malice through the wards, a cold, slimy presence that made his skin crawl. They can't get through, he said, trying to convince himself. The wards are too strong. Alistair nodded, but his expression was grim. The wards are strong, my lord. But they are not unbreakable. If enough dark wizards combine their power, they might be able to breach them. Harry felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He had been training, preparing, but he wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready to face the enemies of his family. But he had no choice. The Death Eaters were here, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. Can you fight them? He asked Alistair. The house elf nodded, his expression fierce. I can defend the manor, my lord. But I cannot protect you if they breach the wards. You must be ready to defend yourself. Harry took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He had been training for months, learning every spell he could. He had mastered the basics of intent magic. He had the power of the Peverells flowing through his veins. He could do this. He had to do this. I'll be ready, he said. Whatever happens, I'll be ready. The Death Eaters began to attack the wards, their wands raised, their spells slamming into the golden barrier. Harry could feel the impact, the wards shuddering under the assault. Stay close to me, my lord, Alistair said, his voice urgent. I will do my best to protect you. But Harry shook his head. No. I need to face them. I need to show them that I'm not afraid. Alistair's eyes widened. My lord, you can't. I can, Harry said, his voice firm. I'm the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. I won't cower in fear while my enemies attack my home. Before Alistair could stop him, Harry stepped through the wards, crossing the boundary that had protected him for months. The Death Eaters turned, their wands trained on him. Harry could see their faces now, pale, cruel, twisted with hatred. The boy who lived, one of them sneered. Not so tough without your protectors, are you? Harry felt a surge of defiance. I don't need protectors. I have the power of the Peverells. The Death Eaters laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. A child playing at being a lord. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Harry didn't respond. He reached deep inside himself, feeling the ancient magic of his ancestors stirring in his blood. He focused his will, pouring every ounce of his strength into a single point of intent. And then, he released it. A wave of golden light exploded from his small body, slamming into the Death Eaters with the force of a hurricane. They were thrown backward, their wands flying from their hands, their cloaks ripped and torn. Harry stood in the center of the chaos, his heart pounding, his breath coming in short gasps. The Peverell magic was roaring through him, filling him with a power that was almost too much to contain. Get out, he said, his voice low and dangerous. Get out of my home. And don't ever come back. The Death Eaters scrambled to their feet, their faces pale with fear. They didn't speak. They turned and fled, disappearing into the night. Harry watched them go, his body trembling with exhaustion. The golden light faded, and he collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. My lord. Alistair was at his side in an instant, his hand steadying him. Are you all right? Harry nodded, his voice weak. I'm fine. I used too much power. Alistair's expression was full of awe. That was incredible, my lord. I've never seen anything like it. The Peverell magic, it's more powerful than I ever imagined. Harry managed a weak smile. I didn't know I could do that. I focused my intent, and it happened. Alistair helped him to his feet. You are a true Peverell, my lord. Your ancestors would be proud. Harry felt a warmth in his chest at those words. He had faced his enemies and won. He had proven himself worthy of his legacy. But even as he celebrated, a voice in the back of his mind warned him that this was just the beginning. The Death Eaters would be back. Voldemort would be back. And next time, they would be stronger. He needed to be stronger too. The attack on the manor set off a wave of reactions in the magical world. News spread quickly through the whispers of the Fleur network and the pages of the Daily Prophet. A 5-year-old boy had defended his home against a squad of Death Eaters. A 5-year-old boy had used magic so powerful that it had sent trained dark wizards fleeing in terror. Some people were impressed. Others were terrified. The magical world is abuzz with speculation about you, Griphook said one evening, his expression unreadable. Some think you are a savior, a symbol of hope. Others think you are a threat, a destabilizing force that must be contained. Harry sighed, feeling the weight of those words. I don't want to be a threat. I just want to be left alone. Griphook shook his head. That is not possible, Lord Peverell. As the head of an ancient house, you are part of the political landscape of magical Britain. You cannot simply withdraw from the world. Harry knew he was right. He had responsibilities now, duties and obligations that he couldn't ignore. The Peverell legacy came with power, and power came with expectations. What do I need to do? He asked. Griphook's eyes glittered. You need to make allies. You need to build a coalition of supporters who will stand by you when the challenges come. The magical world is full of factions and rivalries, and you need to navigate them carefully. Harry nodded slowly. Where do I start? Griphook reached into his desk and pulled out a list of names. These are the families that have been historically aligned with the Peverells. They will be sympathetic to your cause. I recommend you begin by reaching out to them. Harry studied the list, his heart pounding. Names like Bones, Longbottom, Weasley, Tonks, Black. He recognized some of them from his research, ancient families with long histories of service to the magical world. I don't know how to reach out to them, he admitted. I don't even know what to say. Griphook smiled, a thin, calculating expression. You start by inviting them here. The Peverell Manor is a powerful symbol. When they see what you have reclaimed, they will be impressed. And when they meet you, they will see the truth, that you are worthy of their support. Harry took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the task ahead of him. It was overwhelming. But he had faced overwhelming challenges before, and he had survived. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll reach out to them. I'll show them who I am." The invitations went out the next day. Harry spent hours drafting the letters, carefully choosing his words. He wanted to convey his respect for the families he was reaching out to, his desire for friendship and alliance. He wanted to show them that he was not just a child, but a worthy leader. The first responses came within a week. "My Lord Peverell," Flitwick said, reading the letter in his hands. "The Longbottom family has accepted your invitation. They will be arriving next week." Harry felt a surge of relief. "That's great. Who else?" Flitwick consulted the list. "The Bones family has also accepted. As has the Tonks family. The Weasleys have sent their regrets. They have a large family and cannot all travel at this time, but they have expressed interest in future meetings." Harry nodded, feeling a warmth in his chest. People were coming. People were interested in meeting him. He wasn't alone. "Thank you, Professor," he said. "I couldn't have done this without your help." Flitwick smiled, a warm expression. "You did the hard work, Lord Peverell. I just guided you along the way." The preparations for the visitors consumed the next week. Harry worked with Alistair to ensure that the manor was ready, the gardens were trimmed, the rooms were cleaned, the food was prepared. He wanted to make a good impression, to show the visitors that the Peverells were still a force to be reckoned with. The day of the first visit arrived, and Harry was a bundle of nerves. He had never entertained guests before, had never hosted a formal gathering. He didn't know what to say or how to act. But when the Longbottoms arrived, Augusta Longbottom and her young grandson, Neville, Harry discovered that he had nothing to worry about. Augusta was a formidable woman, tall and stern, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. But she was also kind, her gruff exterior hiding a warm heart. "Lord Peverell," she said, extending her hand. "I am Augusta Longbottom. This is my grandson, Neville." Harry shook her hand, his small fingers enveloped in her strong grip. "It's an honor to meet you, Lady Longbottom." Augusta's expression softened slightly. "The honor is ours, Lord Peverell. The Peverells and the Longbottoms have been allies for centuries. It's good to see that legacy continuing." Harry felt a surge of pride. "I'm grateful for your support, Lady Longbottom." Neville stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. He was a few years older than Harry, with a round, friendly face and a nervous demeanor. "Hi," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "I'm Neville. It's nice to meet you." Harry smiled, a genuine smile. "It's nice to meet you too, Neville. Do you want to see the gardens?" Neville's face brightened. "Really? I love gardens." The two boys spent the next hour exploring the gardens, their laughter echoing through the air. Harry showed Neville the magical plants, the fountains, the statues of his ancestors. Neville was fascinated, his questions coming fast and furious. "Your family's history is amazing," Neville said, his eyes wide with wonder. "I wish I knew more about my own family." Harry nodded, feeling a connection to the other boy. They were both heirs to ancient families, both carrying the weight of their legacies. "Maybe we can learn together," Harry said. "We can share what we know." Neville smiled, a shy but genuine expression. "I'd like that." The visits continued over the next few weeks. The Bones family, Amelia Bones, the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, and her niece Susan, arrived, their presence formidable and welcome. Amelia was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who immediately saw the value of an alliance with the Peverells. "The Ministry has been watching you, Lord Peverell," she said, her gaze direct. "Some of them are impressed. Others are worried. But I think you have the potential to do great things." Harry nodded, his expression serious. "I want to help the magical world, Lady Bones. I want to make things better." Amelia's expression softened slightly. "That's a noble goal, Lord Peverell. But you must be careful. The world is full of people who will try to use you for their own purposes." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. I'll be careful. I promise. The Tonks family arrived soon after, Andromeda Tonks, her husband Ted, and their teenage daughter Nymphadora. Nymphadora was a metamorphmagus, her appearance shifting and changing with her moods. She was enthusiastic and cheerful, instantly taking a liking to Harry. "You're so young," she said, her hair shifting from pink to purple. "But everyone's talking about you. You're like a legend." Harry felt a flush of embarrassment. "I'm just a kid. I'm not a legend." Nymphadora laughed. "That's exactly what a legend would say." The visits were a success. Harry had made allies, built connections, and established himself as a force to be reckoned with in the magical world. The families that had come to see him had left impressed and supportive. But not everyone was happy. "There are those who resent your success," Griphook warned. "They see you as an upstart, a child who has been given power he doesn't deserve." Harry felt a surge of anger. "They can think what they want. I earned this power. I proved myself." Griphook nodded, but his expression was still worried. "You have, Lord Peverell. But that doesn't mean they will accept it. There are those who will try to tear you down, no matter what you do." Harry took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Let them try. I'll be ready." The rebuilding of the Peverell legacy continued. Harry trained every day, honing his magical skills and deepening his connection to the Peverell magic. He studied the histories of his ancestors, learning their triumphs and their failures. He reached out to new allies, building a coalition of supporters who would stand by him. And he grew stronger, more confident, more sure of himself. One evening, as Harry stood in the garden, looking out at the stars, his mother's portrait appeared beside him. "Harry," Lily said, her voice soft. "There's something I need to tell you." Harry turned, his heart racing. "What is it, Mom?" Lily's expression was sad. "The wizard who killed us, the wizard who is still hunting you, he is not just any dark wizard. He is the most powerful and dangerous dark wizard in history. His name is Lord Voldemort." Harry felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard the name before, in whispers and rumors. It was a name that inspired fear and revulsion in the magical world. "Voldemort," Harry repeated, the name tasting bitter on his tongue. "He's the one who wants to kill me." Lily nodded. "He believes that you are the threat to his power, the one who will eventually defeat him. He is obsessed with you, Harry. He will stop at nothing to destroy you." Harry felt a surge of fear, but also a flicker of defiance. "Then I'll stop him. I'll find a way." Lily smiled, a proud, sad expression. "I know you will, Harry. You are strong, so much stronger than you know. But you must be careful. Voldemort is cunning and patient. He will wait for the right moment to strike." Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I'll be ready for him. I promise." Lily reached out, her painted hand hovering near his cheek. "I believe in you, Harry. I always have." Harry felt tears pricking at his eyes. "I miss you, Mom. I miss you so much." Lily's expression was full of love. "I miss you too, my darling. But I'm always with you. In your heart, in your magic, in the legacy of the Peverells." Harry nodded, wiping his tears away. "I'll make you proud, Mom. I'll make both of you proud." Lily smiled. "You already have, Harry. You already have." The months passed, and Harry continued to grow. He trained in the ancient magic of the Peverells, learning to channel the power of his ancestors. He studied the histories and traditions of the magical world, gaining a deep understanding of its politics and its people. He built relationships, forged alliances, and established himself as a leader to be reckoned with. And he prepared, always prepared, for the day when Voldemort would return. The tension in the magical world was building. Whispers of dark deeds and shadowy plots filled the air. The Death Eaters were regrouping, their attacks growing bolder and more frequent. Voldemort was out there, somewhere, gathering his strength. Harry knew that the day of reckoning was coming. He could feel it in the air, a sense of foreboding that hung over the world like a dark cloud. But he was not afraid. He had the power of the Peverells in his blood. He had the love of his mother in his heart. He had allies who would stand by him, friends who would fight beside him. He was Harry Peverell, the last of his line. And he would not fail. Late one night, Harry sat in the library, a book of ancient Peverell magic open on his lap. The flames in the fireplace crackled and danced, casting long shadows across the room. He had been reading about the Deathly Hallows, the 3 legendary objects created by his ancestors. The Elder Wand, the Resurrection Stone, and the Cloak of Invisibility. They were the greatest treasures of the Peverell line, objects of immense power and importance. But they were also dangerous, capable of corrupting even the purest of hearts. Harry understood that now. The Hallows were not meant to be wielded lightly. They were not meant to be used at all, unless absolutely necessary. "Is that wise, my lord?" a voice asked. Harry looked up. It was Alistair, his expression concerned. "The Hallows are powerful beyond measure. They can bring great good or great evil, depending on who wields them." Harry nodded, his expression serious. "I know. That's why I need to understand them. I need to know what they can do, what they can't do, and how to use them if the need arises." Alistair studied him for a long moment. "You are wise, my lord, beyond your years. But wisdom is not the same as experience. Be careful with the Hallows. They have claimed many lives." Harry closed the book, his mind racing. He knew Alistair was right. The Hallows were not toys, not objects to be played with. They were weapons, tools of immense power. And one day, he might need to use them. One day, he might need to wield the power of the Peverells to defeat the darkness that threatened the world. "I'll be careful," he said. "I promise." Alistair nodded, a smile flickering on his ancient face. "I know you will, my lord." The stars were out, shining brightly in the dark sky. Harry stood on the balcony of his chambers, looking out at the gardens below. The manor was quiet, peaceful, safe. But he knew it wouldn't last. The darkness was gathering, and soon, it would descend upon them all. But Harry was ready. He had trained, prepared, built alliances. He had the power of the Peverells in his blood, the love of his mother in his heart, the support of his allies at his back. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. He was the last of his line. And he would not let his legacy die. He would protect the magical world from the darkness that threatened it. He would honor the memory of his parents and his ancestors. He would build a future worthy of their sacrifice. "Everything all right, my lord?" Alistair's voice came from behind him. Harry turned, a smile on his face. "Everything's perfect, Alistair." "Thank you." Alistair smiled, his ancient eyes twinkling. "It is my honor to serve you, my lord." Harry looked back out at the stars, at the endless expanse of the sky. The world was full of challenges and dangers, but it was also full of beauty and hope. And Harry Peverell was determined to protect it, no matter the cost. The night stretched on, dark and full of mystery. But Harry was not afraid. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And he would rise to meet whatever the future held. The legacy of the Peverells would not end with him. It would continue, stronger and brighter than ever before. Harry closed his eyes, feeling the ancient magic of his ancestors flowing through his veins. He was ready. He was more than ready. He was the last Peverell, and he would make his family proud. Chapter 4, The Battle for the Inheritance. The library of Peverell Manor had never felt so small. Harry sat at the massive oak desk, his small hands gripping the edges of a parchment that seemed to burn with every word written upon it. The morning light that usually filled the room with such warmth now felt cold, almost accusatory, as if the very sun had turned against him. Griphook stood across from him, his beady eyes fixed on Harry's face, watching for any sign of weakness. Alistair hovered near the door, his ancient face etched with worry. And on the wall above the fireplace, the portrait of Ignatius Peverell was unusually still, his painted eyes clouded with concern. The ministry has formally challenged your claim, Griphook said, his voice flat and unemotional. They have filed a petition with the Wisengamot, demanding that your inheritance be revoked pending a full investigation into your legitimacy. Harry felt his stomach drop. But the ritual of blood proved I was the rightful heir. They witnessed it themselves. The ritual of blood is powerful magic, Griphook acknowledged. But it is not infallible. The ministry is claiming that you may have been coerced or manipulated by external forces, specifically, by the goblins, who they believe are attempting to use you as a puppet to gain control over Peverell assets. Harry's hands clenched into fists. That's ridiculous. You've been nothing but helpful. You've guided me, protected me, taught me. Griphook's expression remained impassive. I know that, Lord Peverell. You know that. But the ministry is not interested in the truth. They are interested in power. There are those within the Wisengamot who see your rise as a threat to their own positions, and they will stop at nothing to tear you down. Harry took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He had faced challenges before, the Dursleys, the Death Eaters, the fear and loneliness of his childhood. He could face this too. What do we do? He asked, his voice steady. Griphook's eyes glittered with approval. We fight. We gather evidence, rally our allies, and prepare to defend your claim before the Wisengamot. The law is on your side, Lord Peverell. We simply need to prove it. Harry nodded, feeling a surge of determination. Then let's get started. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Harry worked tirelessly with Griphook and his legal team, compiling evidence to support his claim. They gathered records of the blood test, witness statements from the ministry delegation, and historical documents tracing the Peverell lineage back centuries. They reached out to their allies, the Longbottoms, the Bones, the Tonks family, and asked for their support. But the opposition was formidable. The Malfoy family is leading the charge against you, Griphook reported one evening, his expression grim. Lucius Malfoy has been lobbying the Wisengamot, spreading rumors about your legitimacy and your supposed ties to dark magic. He has gathered a coalition of old families who fear the disruption you represent. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. He had read about the Malfoys in his studies, a wealthy and influential family with a long history of dark alliances. They were not the kind of enemies he wanted to make. Why are they so opposed to me? He asked. I've never done anything to them. Griphook's expression was unreadable. You represent a threat to their power, Lord Peverell. The Peverells were one of the most powerful families in magical history. If you reclaim your inheritance and restore the family's influence, the Malfoys will lose their position at the top of the hierarchy. They cannot allow that to happen. Harry felt a surge of anger. So they'll lie and cheat to keep their power. They'll destroy a child's future just to protect their own interests. Indeed, Griphook said. That is the nature of magical politics. Harry took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. Then we need to be smarter than them. We need to use their tactics against them. Griphook's eyes glittered. What do you have in mind? The strategy was simple but bold. Harry would go on the offensive, using the power of his title and the support of his allies to expose the corruption and self-interest of his opponents. He would make the case publicly, appealing to the magical community's sense of justice and fair play. But first, he needed to meet with his allies, to coordinate their efforts and solidify their support. The meeting was held in the Grand Hall of Peverell Manor, the first time the space had been used for a formal gathering in centuries. Harry stood at the head of the table, his small frame dwarfed by the massive chairs and the ancient tapestries that lined the walls. Around the table sat the representatives of the allied families, Augusta Longbottom, her expression stern and unwavering, Amelia Bones, her eyes sharp and calculating, Andromeda Tonks, her hand resting on her husband's arm. There were others too, lesser families who had pledged their support, their faces filled with hope and determination. Thank you all for coming, Harry said, his voice steady despite the nerves that churned in his stomach. I know that this is a difficult time, and I appreciate your willingness to stand by me. Augusta Longbottom nodded. The Peverells and the Longbottoms have been allies for generations, Lord Peverell. We will not abandon you now. Amelia Bones leaned forward. The ministry's actions are a disgrace. They are trampling on the sacred rights of an ancient house to protect their own power. I have spoken to several members of the Wisengamot, and I believe we have a strong case. Harry felt a surge of hope. What do we need to do? Amelia's expression was thoughtful. First, we need to present our evidence in a clear and compelling way. The ministry's claims are based on speculation and innuendo, not facts. We need to show the Wisengamot the truth, that you are the rightful heir, that your claim is legitimate, and that the ministry's challenge is based on nothing more than political self-interest. Harry nodded. I can do that. I can stand before the Wisengamot and tell them my story. Andromeda Tonks reached out, placing her hand on Harry's. You're very brave, Lord Peverell. This can't be easy for you. Harry managed a small smile. It's not easy. But I'm not alone. I have all of you. The day of the Wisengamot hearing arrived, cold and grey. Harry stood in the entrance hall of the Ministry of Magic, his heart pounding in his chest. The building was vast and imposing, its walls lined with portraits of ancient wizards who watched him with expressions of curiosity and suspicion. Griphook stood beside him, his presence steadying. Remember, Lord Peverell, you are the rightful heir. The law is on your side. All we need to do is prove it. Harry nodded, his throat tight. I'm ready. The hearing was held in the main chamber of the Wisengamot, a vast circular room filled with tiered seating. At the center of the room, on a raised dais, sat the chief warlock, a wizened old wizard with a long white beard and eyes that seemed to see everything. Harry walked to the center of the room, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. He could feel the eyes of the assembled wizards and witches on him, hundreds of them, their gazes filled with curiosity, suspicion, and in some cases, outright hostility. Lucius Malfoy was there, seated in the front row, his cold grey eyes fixed on Harry with undisguised contempt. Beside him sat other members of the old families, their expressions similarly hostile. The chief warlock rapped his gavel. The Wisengamot will come to order. This hearing is convened to determine the legitimacy of the claim of one Harry James Potter, now styling himself as Harry Peverell, to the title and inheritance of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. Harry took a deep breath, his heart racing. He had prepared for this moment. He knew what he needed to say. Lord Peverell, the chief warlock said, his voice echoing through the chamber. You have been called before this body to answer questions regarding the legitimacy of your claim. Do you understand the charges against you? Harry nodded. Yes, sir. I understand. Then let us begin. Mr. Malfoy, you have the floor. Lucius Malfoy rose, his robes sweeping behind him. He was tall and elegant, with silver blonde hair and a cold, calculating expression. His voice was smooth, almost silken, as he addressed the Wisengamot. Esteemed members of the Wisengamot, he began. We are gathered here today to address a matter of grave importance. A child, barely old enough to understand the world around him, has been manipulated by forces outside his control. The goblins, long known for their greed and ambition, have seized upon this innocent boy to further their own ends. They have used dark and dangerous magic to convince him that he is something he is not, the heir to a legacy that has been dormant for centuries. Harry felt a surge of anger. He wanted to shout, to protest, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was what Lucius wanted, to provoke him, to make him lose control. I have evidence, Lucius continued, that the goblins have been engaging in illegal blood magic, manipulating the boy's memories and emotions to make him believe that he is the rightful heir. The ritual of blood was not a true test, but a sham, a carefully orchestrated illusion designed to fool the ministry and legitimize the goblins' claim on the Peverell assets. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Harry could feel the tide turning against him, the suspicions of the Wisengamot being awakened by Lucius's words. The chief warlock rapped his gavel. Mr. Malfoy, do you have evidence to support these claims? Lucius smiled, a thin, predatory expression. I do, Chief Warlock. I have witnessed statements from several experts in blood magic who have examined the ritual of blood and found it to be flawed. I have testimony from individuals who were present at the boy's birth, who can attest to his true parentage. And I have documentation showing that the goblins have been attempting to gain control of the Peverell assets for decades. Harry's heart sank. This was worse than he had expected. Lucius had been preparing for this moment for a long time, building a case that was carefully designed to undermine his credibility. "Mr. Malfoy," Harry said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "May I ask a question?" Lucius's eyes narrowed. "You may, boy." Harry turned to the Wizengamot, his voice steady. "Esteemed members of the Wizengamot, I ask you to consider the evidence that Mr. Malfoy has presented. He claims that the goblins manipulated me, that they used dark magic to make me believe I am the heir. But he has provided no concrete proof, no documents, no magical signatures, nothing that would hold up to scrutiny. His accusations are based on speculation and innuendo, nothing more." Lucius's expression flickered, a brief flash of anger that he quickly suppressed. "The boy is clever, I'll give him that. But cleverness is not the same as truth." Harry turned to face Lucius directly. "And what about your own truth, Mr. Malfoy? What about the documented evidence of your family's dark alliances, your father's involvement with the Death Eaters, your own history of using your influence to suppress your political opponents? Are those truths you're willing to share with the Wizengamot?" The chamber erupted in murmurs. Harry could see several members of the Wizengamot shifting in their seats, their expressions uneasy. Lucius's face flushed with anger. "This is a distraction. The boy is trying to divert attention from his own fraudulent claim." "Am I?" Harry asked, his voice calm. "Or am I simply pointing out that the people who are accusing me have their own reasons for wanting to see my claim fail? The Peverells were a threat to the old families because they refused to bow to corruption and self-interest. I am a threat to them for the same reason." The chief warlock rapped his gavel again. "Order. The Wizengamot will come to order." Harry took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He had made his case, and he could only hope that it had been effective. The hearing continued for hours. Harry presented his evidence, his voice steady and unwavering. He showed the documentation from the blood test, the witness statements from the ministry delegation, and the historical records proving his lineage. He spoke of his childhood, the years of abuse and neglect, and the moment he had discovered his true heritage. He spoke of his parents, of the sacrifice they had made, and of the legacy they had left him. "My parents died to protect me," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "They gave their lives so that I could live. They didn't do that so I could be manipulated by goblins or used as a pawn in some political game. They did it because they loved me, because they believed I had a destiny." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of the assembled wizards and witches. "I am the heir to the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. I have proven it through blood, through magic, and through the law. I will not let anyone take that away from me." The Wizengamot deliberated for hours. Harry sat in the antechamber, his heart pounding, his mind racing. Alastair was beside him, his ancient hand resting on Harry's shoulder in silent support. "You did well, my lord," Alastair said. "The Wizengamot will see the truth." Harry nodded, his throat tight. "I hope so. I really hope so." The door to the antechamber opened, and Griphook entered, his expression unreadable. "The Wizengamot has reached its decision," he said. "They are ready to announce the verdict." Harry rose, his legs shaky. "What is it?" Griphook's eyes glittered. "You will find out soon enough." The chamber was silent as Harry re-entered. The Wizengamot members were seated, their expressions neutral and unreadable. The chief warlock stood, his gavel in hand. "The Wizengamot has reached a decision," he said. "After careful deliberation and examination of the evidence presented, we have found that Harry James Potter, Lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell, is the legitimate heir to the Peverell inheritance." Harry's heart soared. He had won. The verdict was in his favor. However, the chief warlock continued, "We have also found that there are irregularities in the transfer of certain assets. The goblins will be required to undergo a full audit of their involvement in the Peverell inheritance, and the ministry will appoint an independent overseer to manage the boy's affairs until he reaches his majority." Harry's joy turned to confusion. "An overseer? But I'm the head of the house. I should be able to manage my own affairs. The chief warlock's expression was sympathetic but firm. I understand your concern, Lord Peverell. But the law is clear, a minor cannot hold full control of an inheritance of this magnitude without proper oversight. The overseer will act in your best interests, ensuring that your assets are managed properly until you come of age. Harry felt a surge of frustration. This wasn't a complete victory. The ministry was still trying to control him, still trying to limit his power. Who will the overseer be? He asked, his voice tight. The chief warlock consulted his notes. The position will be filled by a neutral party, approved by both the ministry and the goblins. I believe the name is Albus Dumbledore. Harry's breath caught in his throat. Albus Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, the most powerful wizard in the world. He had read about Dumbledore in his studies, had admired him from afar. But he had never imagined that the wizard would be inserted into his life in such a direct way. The appointment is temporary, the chief warlock added. Once you reach your majority, full control will be restored to you. Harry nodded, forcing himself to accept the decision. He had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Thank you, Chief Warlock, he said. I accept the decision of the Wizengamot. The Chief Warlock smiled, a thin, satisfied expression. Then this hearing is adjourned. The aftermath of the hearing was a whirlwind of activity. Harry was surrounded by his allies, their congratulations warm and genuine. Augusta Longbottom clasped his hand firmly, her eyes shining with pride. Amelia Bones nodded approvingly, her expression one of respect. Andromeda Tonks hugged him tightly, her voice choked with emotion. You did it, she said. You really did it. Harry smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He had won, but he had also lost. The oversight of Albus Dumbledore was a significant restriction on his power, a constant reminder that the ministry still had a hold on him. Lucius Malfoy pushed through the crowd, his expression cold and furious. This isn't over, boy, he hissed. You may have won today, but the Peverells will never regain their former glory. I will see to that. Harry met his gaze, his eyes steady. I don't care about glory, Mr. Malfoy. I care about justice. And I will see that justice is done. Lucius's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. He turned and stalked away, his robes billowing behind him. Harry watched him go, his heart filled with a mixture of anger and determination. The battle for his inheritance was over, but the battle for his future was just beginning. The days that followed were a blur of meetings and negotiations. Harry worked closely with Griphook and his legal team to implement the Wizengamot's decision. The goblins were audited, their involvement in the Peverell inheritance examined and approved. The independent overseer was appointed, a neutral party who would oversee the management of Harry's assets. Albus Dumbledore arrived at the manor 2 weeks after the hearing. Harry had been preparing for this moment, researching Dumbledore's history and accomplishments. He knew that the headmaster was a formidable figure, one of the most respected wizards in the world. He also knew that Dumbledore had a reputation for secrecy and manipulation, for playing his cards close to his chest. The meeting was held in the library, a neutral ground where both parties could feel comfortable. Dumbledore arrived in a swirl of blue robes, his long white beard flowing behind him. His eyes were bright and kind, twinkling with an intelligence that seemed to see everything. Lord Peverell, Dumbledore said, bowing slightly. It is an honor to meet you. I have heard so much about you. Harry returned the bow, his heart pounding. The honor is mine, Professor Dumbledore. Thank you for coming. Dumbledore settled into a chair, his expression warm. I must admit, I was surprised when the ministry asked me to serve as your overseer. But after learning more about your situation, I understand why they chose me. Harry felt a flicker of suspicion. And why did they choose you? Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Because they know I have no personal stake in your inheritance. I am not allied with any of the families who oppose you, nor am I aligned with the goblins. I am a neutral party, and that makes me the ideal candidate to oversee your affairs. Harry nodded slowly, but he wasn't entirely convinced. He had read about Dumbledore's history, about his role in the defeat of Grindelwald and his leadership of the Order of the Phoenix. He knew that Dumbledore was a powerful ally to have, but also a potential threat. "What do you want from this arrangement?" Harry asked bluntly. Dumbledore's expression flickered, a hint of surprise crossing his face. "I want to help you, Lord Peverell. I want to ensure that your inheritance is managed properly and that you receive the education and guidance you need to fulfill your potential." Harry studied the headmaster, searching for any sign of deception. "And what about my parents? You knew them, didn't you?" Dumbledore's eyes grew sad. "I knew them well. James and Lily were two of the finest people I have ever had the privilege of knowing. Their loss was a tragedy, not just for you, but for the entire magical world." Harry felt a surge of emotion. "Then you understand why this is important to me. You understand why I can't let anyone take this away from me." Dumbledore nodded slowly. "I do, Lord Peverell. And I promise you, I will do everything in my power to protect your inheritance and help you grow into the wizard you are destined to become." Harry felt a flicker of trust, a tentative hope. Maybe Dumbledore was different from the others. Maybe he genuinely wanted to help. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate that." The weeks that followed were a period of adjustment. Dumbledore proved to be a careful and conscientious overseer, managing Harry's assets with precision and transparency. He also provided guidance and mentorship, offering advice on everything from magical theory to political strategy. But he also maintained a certain distance, a reserve that Harry couldn't quite penetrate. There were secrets in Dumbledore's eyes, things he wasn't willing to share. Harry didn't push. He had learned patience, learned to wait for the right moment to ask the important questions. But the questions were always there, burning in the back of his mind. What was Dumbledore's true agenda? What were the secrets he was hiding? And what did he really want from Harry? The Peverell magic continued to grow stronger. Harry trained every day, honing his skills and deepening his connection to the ancient power of his ancestors. Flitwick continued to visit, guiding him through the complexities of magical theory and practice. And Harry continued to explore the Peverell legacy, delving deeper into the histories and traditions of his family. He learned about the wars they had fought, the alliances they had forged, and the sacrifices they had made. He also learned about the enemies they had made, the families who had sought to destroy them. The Malfoys were just the latest in a long line of adversaries who had tried to tear the Peverells down. But the Peverells had always survived. They had always risen again. And Harry would be the same. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. Harry was in the garden, practicing his intent magic, when he felt a familiar presence. It was cold and dark, a slimy touch that made his skin crawl. He looked up. Lucius Malfoy was standing at the edge of the garden, his wand drawn, his expression cold and murderous. "You think you've won, boy," Lucius said, his voice low and dangerous. "But you're wrong. The Peverells will never rise again. I will see to that." Harry felt a surge of defiance. "You can't stop me, Malfoy. I have the power of the Peverells in my blood. I have the support of my allies. I will not let you destroy what my family built." Lucius smiled, a cold, cruel expression. "We'll see about that." He raised his wand, a sickly green light gathering at its tip. Harry could feel the dark magic in the air, could feel the malice behind it. And then, he moved. He raised his own wand, drawing on the ancient power of his ancestors. The Peverell magic surged through him, filling him with strength and purpose. "Protego Maxima," he shouted, his voice echoing through the garden. A massive shield erupted in front of him, golden and shimmering, deflecting Lucius's attack. The dark magic splashed against it like water against a rock. Lucius's eyes widened. "Impossible. The boy is just a child." "I'm the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell," Harry said, his voice steady and cold. "And I will not be defeated by the likes of you." He raised his wand again, focusing his intent. He thought of his parents, of the sacrifice they had made. He thought of the years of abuse at the hands of the Dursleys. He thought of all the people who had tried to tear him down, and all the reasons he had to fight back. And then, he released the spell. A wave of golden light erupted from his wand, slamming into Lucius with the force of a hurricane. The Death Eater was thrown backward, his wand flying from his hand, his body crashing into the garden wall. Lucius lay there, groaning, his face pale with shock. Harry walked toward him, his wand still raised, his expression cold and unforgiving. "Leave this place," Harry said. "Leave my home, and don't ever come back. If I see you again, I will not be so merciful." Lucius scrambled to his feet, his eyes wide with fear. He didn't speak. He simply turned and fled, disappearing into the night. Harry watched him go, his heart pounding, his body trembling with exhaustion. He had faced his enemy and won. He had proven that he was worthy of the Peverell legacy. But even as he celebrated, a voice in the back of his mind warned him that this was just the beginning. The Malfoys were not the only ones who opposed him. There were others, more powerful and more dangerous, who would stop at nothing to destroy him. He needed to be ready. He needed to be stronger. The allies gathered in the grand hall of the manor, their faces filled with pride and relief. "You did it, Lord Peverell," Augusta Longbottom said, her voice thick with emotion. "You faced the Malfoys and won." Harry smiled, a tired but genuine expression. "I couldn't have done it without all of you. You were the ones who stood by me when everyone else turned away." Amelia Bones nodded. "The magical world is changing, Lord Peverell. The old families are losing their grip on power, and a new generation is rising. You are the symbol of that change." Harry felt a surge of hope. "Then let's make it happen. Let's build a world where justice and honor matter more than power and wealth." The allies cheered, their voices rising in agreement. Harry felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. He was not alone. He would never be alone again. The ceremony was held in the gardens, under the light of the stars. Harry stood at the center, his signet ring on his finger, his wand in his hand. The Peverell magic was flowing through him, ancient and powerful, connecting him to his ancestors and his descendants. "By the blood of the Peverells, by the magic of our ancestors, I claim this legacy as my own," he said, his voice ringing through the night. "I will honor our traditions. I will protect our secrets. I will carry our name into the future." The golden light pulsed from his ring, spreading through the garden like a wave. The portraits on the walls stirred, their painted eyes flickering with recognition. "Lord Peverell," a voice said. It was his mother's portrait, Lily, her face glowing with pride and love. "You have done it. You have fully reclaimed your inheritance." Harry smiled, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I did it, Mum. I did it." Lily's painted hand touched her heart. "I am so proud of you, Harry. Your father would be proud too." Harry nodded, his throat too tight to speak. He had done it. He had reclaimed his inheritance. He had restored his family's legacy. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And nothing in the world could change that. The garden was silent, the stars shining down on the victor. Harry stood at the center of the magic, his heart full of hope and determination. He had faced the challenge and won. He had proven himself worthy. But the battle was not over. The dark forces that threatened the magical world were still out there, waiting. And Harry Peverell would be ready for them. The night stretched on, dark and full of mystery. But Harry was not afraid. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And he would rise to meet whatever the future held. The legacy of the Peverells would not end with him. It would continue, stronger and brighter than ever before. Harry closed his eyes, feeling the ancient magic of his ancestors flowing through his veins. He was ready. He was more than ready. He was the last Peverell, and he would make his family proud. Chapter 5, The Rise of House Peverell. The morning sun cast long shadows across the gardens of Peverell Manor, painting the dew-kissed grass in shades of gold and emerald. Harry stood at the edge of the fountain, watching the water dance and sparkle in the light. The statue at its center, a figure of a woman with flowing robes and outstretched arms, seemed to glow with an inner warmth, as if the magic of the manor was greeting the new day with joy. Harry felt that joy too. It had been 6 months since the Wisingamot hearing, 6 months since he had fully reclaimed his inheritance. The legal battles were over, the challenges to his claim had been defeated, and the Peverell legacy was finally secure. But more than that, Harry had grown. He was no longer the frightened, uncertain boy who had stumbled into Gringotts with his aunt. He was taller now, stronger, his face less gaunt and his eyes brighter. The years of abuse and neglect were fading, replaced by the confidence and purpose of a young lord who knew exactly who he was and what he wanted. And what he wanted was to restore the House of Peverell to its former glory. The door to the manor opened, and Alastair emerged, carrying a tray of tea and pastries. The house elf moved with practiced grace, his ancient eyes twinkling with approval. "Good morning, my lord," Alastair said, setting the tray down on the stone table beside the fountain. "You're up early today." Harry smiled, accepting a cup of tea. "I couldn't sleep. Too much on my mind." Alastair nodded, his expression knowing. "The meeting with the delegations. It's today, isn't it?" Harry took a sip of tea, the warmth spreading through his chest. "Yes. The Greengrasses, the Petills, the Lovegoods, the Weasleys, they're all coming. This is the first time I've invited representatives from all the neutral families to the manor. It's important." Alastair's eyes were full of pride. "You are building something remarkable, my lord. The Peverells have not been this influential in centuries." Harry set down his cup, his gaze sweeping across the gardens. "That's what I want. Not just influence, but a new beginning. A way for the magical world to heal from the divisions of the past." Alastair bowed his head. "And you will succeed, my lord. I have no doubt of it." Harry smiled, but his mind was already racing ahead to the meeting. The neutral families were the key to his strategy. The old families, the Malfoys, the Blacks, the Lestranges, were entrenched in their ways, loyal to the dark forces that had nearly destroyed the magical world. But the neutral families, those who had tried to stay out of the conflicts, represented a chance to build a new coalition. A coalition that would stand against the darkness. The Grand Hall of Peverell Manor had been transformed. Harry had worked with Alastair for weeks to prepare for the meeting, ensuring that every detail was perfect. The ancient tapestries had been cleaned and restored, their images of Peverell triumphs and glories shining like new. The long oak table had been polished until it gleamed, its surface covered with silver candelabras and vases of fresh flowers. The fireplaces crackled with flames that were more gold than orange, their warmth filling the room with a sense of welcome and comfort. Harry stood at the head of the table, dressed in robes of deep green and silver, the colors of the Peverell house. The signet ring on his finger gleamed in the firelight, a constant reminder of the legacy he carried. The guests began to arrive, their faces a mixture of curiosity and anticipation. First came the Greengrasses, Lord Cyrus Greengrass, a tall, dignified wizard with kind eyes and a careful demeanor, accompanied by his wife and their 2 daughters, Daphne and Astoria. The Greengrasses were one of the oldest and most respected families in the magical world, known for their neutrality and their commitment to peace. "Lord Peverell," Cyrus said, bowing deeply. "It is an honor to be invited to your home. The Greengrass family has long admired the Peverells from afar." Harry returned the bow, his smile genuine. "The honor is mine, Lord Greengrass. I'm grateful for your willingness to come." Cyrus's eyes twinkled. "When the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell invites you to his manor, you do not refuse. The Peverells have always been a family of visionaries. I am curious to see what vision you bring to the world." Harry felt a warmth in his chest. "I hope it will be a vision worthy of my ancestors." Next came the Petills, Lord and Lady Petill, accompanied by their twin daughters, Padma and Parvati. The Petills were a family of scholars and diplomats, known for their wisdom and their commitment to education. "Lord Peverell," Lord Petill said, his voice warm. "We have heard great things about you. Your work in restoring the Peverell legacy has inspired many." Harry felt a flush of pride. "Thank you, Lord Petill. I'm just trying to do what's right." Lady Petill smiled, a knowing expression. That is precisely what the magical world needs, my lord. People who do what is right, rather than what is easy. The Lovegoods arrived next, Xenophilius Lovegood, a tall, eccentric wizard with white hair and a dreamy expression, accompanied by his young daughter, Luna. The Lovegoods were known for their unconventional views and their deep connection to the magical world's ancient traditions. Lord Peverell, Xenophilius said, his voice lilting. I have been reading the Quibbler archives, and I have discovered several fascinating articles about your family. Did you know that the Peverells were rumored to have communication with the Crumplehorn Snorkax? Harry blinked, unsure how to respond. I didn't know that, Mr. Lovegood. Xenophilius nodded sagely. Yes, it's all there in the historical records. The Peverells were always ahead of their time. Luna Lovegood, a girl of about Harry's age with long, silvery blonde hair and large, dreamy eyes, stepped forward. My father is very interested in your family's history. So am I. Harry smiled at her. I'm glad to hear that. I'm always happy to talk about my family. Luna tilted her head, her eyes seeming to look through him. You have very strong energy, Lord Peverell. The Nargles approve. Harry wasn't sure what a Nargle was, but he nodded politely. Thank you, Miss Lovegood. I think. Finally, the Weasleys arrived, a large, boisterous family that seemed to fill the room with warmth and laughter the moment they entered. Arthur Weasley, a kind-faced wizard with a love of all things Muggle, led the group, followed by his wife, Molly, and their children, Bill, Charlie, Percy, Fred, George, Ron, and Ginny. Harry had been looking forward to meeting the Weasleys. They were one of the most prominent neutral families in the magical world, known for their loyalty, their bravery, and their unwavering commitment to doing what was right. Lord Peverell, Arthur said, shaking Harry's hand vigorously. It's a tremendous honor to meet you. I've read so much about your family. The Peverells were pioneers in magical innovation. Harry smiled. Thank you, Mr. Weasley. I'm grateful for your family's support. Molly Weasley stepped forward, her face warm with motherly affection. You're just a boy, she said, her voice soft. Look at you. So young, and yet you've done so much. Harry felt a lump in his throat. I've had a lot of help. Molly squeezed his hand gently. Well, you have more help now, dear. The Weasleys stand with you. Fred and George Weasley, identical red-haired twins with mischievous grins, stepped forward. We've heard a lot about you, Fred said. They say you can do things that even the Ministry wizards can't. George nodded. And we've heard about your duel with Malfoy. That must have been brilliant. Harry chuckled. It was intense. Ron Weasley, a boy about Harry's age with sandy hair and a nervous expression, shuffled forward. Hi, he said, his voice quiet. I'm Ron. It's nice to meet you. Harry smiled at him. It's nice to meet you too, Ron. Ginny Weasley, the youngest of the family, stood behind her mother, her brown eyes wide with curiosity. She was small and shy, but there was a spark in her expression that reminded Harry of something, a determination, a fire that was waiting to be unleashed. Harry waved at her, and she smiled back, a tentative but genuine expression. The meeting began with formal introductions and expressions of mutual respect. Harry spoke about his vision for the Peverell legacy, a vision of unity, of healing, of building a world where magic was used for the good of all, not for the benefit of a privileged few. The representatives of the neutral families listened intently, their expressions thoughtful. Lord Peverell, Cyrus Greengrass said, leaning forward. What you are proposing is ambitious. But the magical world is deeply divided. The old families, the Death Eaters, the Ministry's corruption, these are not problems that can be solved overnight. Harry nodded, acknowledging the point. I know. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. The Peverells have always been innovators, pioneers. We don't accept the world as it is, we strive to make it better. Lord Patil raised an eyebrow. And how do you propose to do that, Lord Peverell? How do you propose to change a world that has been mired in conflict for centuries? Harry took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. By building a new coalition. The old families have controlled the magical world for too long, and they have led it to the brink of destruction. The neutral families have the power to change that. If we stand together, we can create a new order, a order based on justice, honor, and the rule of law. Xenophilius Lovegood nodded slowly. The Peverells have always understood the importance of balance, he said. Balance between tradition and innovation, between power and responsibility. That is what the magical world needs now, balance. Arthur Weasley spoke up, his voice earnest. The Weasleys have always believed in standing up for what's right. We may not be wealthy or powerful, but we have conviction. And we're willing to fight for a better future. Molly Weasley placed a hand on her husband's arm, her expression proud. The Peverells and the Weasleys have been allies in the past, she said. We would be honored to stand with you again. Harry felt a surge of emotion. Thank you, he said, his voice thick. Thank you all. I know that this won't be easy. I know there will be challenges and setbacks. But together, I believe we can make a difference. Fred Weasley grinned. We've got your back, Lord Peverell. George nodded. And if anyone tries to cause trouble, we've got a few tricks up our sleeves. Harry laughed, the tension in the room breaking. I don't doubt it. The weeks that followed the meeting were a whirlwind of activity. Harry worked tirelessly with his new allies, building the coalition that would challenge the old order. They held meetings, drafted documents, and reached out to other families who were sympathetic to their cause. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Families who had remained neutral for generations, afraid of the repercussions of taking sides, were inspired by Harry's vision. They saw in him a leader who was different from the old guard, a leader who was guided by principle, not power. But not everyone was happy. The old families, led by the Malfoys, were furious. They saw the rise of House Peverell as a direct threat to their influence, and they were determined to stop it. There are whispers of a counter-alliance, Griphook warned one evening. The Malfoys and their allies are gathering their own coalition. They are planning to challenge you politically, legally, and possibly even magically. Harry felt a chill run down his spine. What do they want? Griphook's eyes glittered. They want to destroy you, Lord Peverell. They see you as the greatest threat to their power since the days of Dumbledore's order. They will stop at nothing to see you fall. Harry took a deep breath, steadying himself. Then we need to be ready. We need to expose their corruption, rally our allies, and show the magical world what they're really up against. Griphook nodded approvingly. That is a wise strategy, Lord Peverell. But it is also dangerous. The old families are powerful and ruthless. They will not hesitate to use violence to achieve their goals. Harry met his gaze, his eyes steady. Neither will I. I've faced the Death Eaters before. I'll face them again if I have to. The counter-alliance struck first. A series of attacks targeted the allies of House Peverell. The Lovegoods' home was vandalized. The Patils received threatening letters. The Weasleys' house was targeted by a group of masked wizards. Harry was furious. They're going after innocent people, he said, pacing the library. People who just want to make the magical world a better place. Dumbledore, who had been appointed as his overseer, watched him with calm, steady eyes. The old families are trying to intimidate your allies, he said. They want to break the coalition before it can gain momentum. Harry stopped pacing, his fists clenched at his sides. Then we need to send a message. We need to show them that we won't be intimidated. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. And what message would you send, Lord Peverell? Harry met his gaze, his expression fierce. We fight back. Not with violence, but with truth. We expose their crimes to the magical world. We show everyone what they've done and what they're trying to do. Dumbledore nodded slowly. That is a wise approach, Lord Peverell. The truth is a powerful weapon, more powerful than any curse. The campaign began immediately. Harry worked with Griphook and his allies to gather evidence of the old family's crimes. They uncovered documents, witness statements, and magical traces that proved the Malfoys and their allies were involved in dark magic, corruption, and illegal activities. The evidence was presented to the Wisengamot in a formal hearing. Harry stood before the assembled members, his voice steady and unwavering. The Malfoy family and their allies have been abusing their power for decades, he said. They have engaged in illegal dark magic, bribed ministry officials, and threatened innocent families. The magical world deserves to know the truth. The Wisengamot was stunned. The evidence was overwhelming, and the old families couldn't deny it. Lucius Malfoy tried to mount a defense, but it was too late. The truth was out, and the magical world was outraged. Lucius Malfoy and his allies have been stripped of their political positions, Griphook reported, his voice full of satisfaction. They are under investigation by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Their influence is shattered. Harry felt a surge of triumph. They had done it. They had exposed the corruption of the old families and weakened their power. But the battle wasn't over. Not yet. Harry stood in the garden, watching the sun set behind the distant hills. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple, the colors merging and blending in a display of natural beauty. Alastair appeared beside him, his ancient face lined with concern. "Are you all right, my lord?" Harry nodded. "I'm fine, Alastair. Just thinking." Alastair's eyes were filled with understanding. "You have accomplished so much, my lord. The Peverell legacy is stronger than it has been in centuries." Harry smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes. "I know. And I'm grateful. But sometimes I wonder, what would my parents think? Would they be proud of me?" Alastair placed a hand on his shoulder. "I believe they would be very proud, my lord. You have honored their memory and carried their legacy forward." Harry felt a lump in his throat. "Thank you, Alastair. I needed to hear that." The old elf smiled, a warm, genuine expression. "It is the truth, my lord. And I will always speak the truth to you." The coalition grew stronger. More families joined the alliance, inspired by Harry's vision and his commitment to justice. The magical world was changing, and House Peverell was at the center of that change. Harry held regular meetings with his allies, working together to develop strategies and build a better future. He consulted with Dumbledore, whose wisdom and experience proved invaluable. He trained with Flitwick, honing his magical skills and deepening his understanding of the magical arts. And he grew closer to his friends. Ron Weasley, Neville Longbottom, Luna Lovegood, they became his companions, his confidants, his supporters. They believed in him, and that belief gave him strength. But there were also challenges. The old families continued to plot, their resentment festering in the shadows. There were whispers of a new Death Eater resurgence, of dark forces gathering in the secret places of the world. Harry knew that the darkness was still there, waiting. But he was determined to face it. "I won't let fear control me," he told his allies one evening. "The Peverells have always faced the darkness with courage and resolve. That's what I intend to do." Neville Longbottom nodded, his expression serious. "We'll stand with you, Harry. Whatever it takes." Ron Weasley grinned. "We're the Peverell Coalition. No one messes with us." Fred and George held up their wands in salute. "Here, here." Harry laughed, the tension breaking. "Thanks, everyone. I'm grateful for all of you." The final step in the restoration of House Peverell was the formal induction ceremony. It was held in the Grand Hall of the Manor, the first time the space had been used for such a purpose in centuries. The hall was filled with representatives of the allied families, their faces bright with anticipation. Harry stood at the center of the room, his robes of green and silver shimmering in the candlelight. The Peverell signet ring on his finger glowed with an inner light, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. "By the blood of the Peverells," he said, his voice ringing through the hall. "By the magic of our ancestors. By the legacy of our house. I hereby declare that the ancient and most noble House of Peverell is restored to its former glory." A pulse of golden light erupted from his ring, spreading through the room like a wave. The portraits on the walls stirred, their painted eyes flickering with recognition and approval. The allies cheered, their voices rising in triumph. And Harry stood at the center of it all, his heart full of hope and determination. He had done it. He had restored the legacy of his family. He had built a coalition of allies. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. But he knew that the journey wasn't over. There were still challenges ahead, still battles to be fought. But he was ready. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And he would never be afraid again. The night of the ceremony, Harry walked through the gardens, his mind full of thoughts and emotions. The stars were out, scattered across the sky like diamonds on a velvet cloth. His mother's portrait appeared beside him, her face glowing with love and pride. "Harry," she said, her voice soft. "I'm so proud of you. You've done everything we ever hoped you would do." Harry smiled, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I did it, Mum. I restored our legacy." Lily reached out, her painted hand hovering near his cheek. "You did more than that, Harry. You brought hope back to the magical world. You showed everyone that the darkness can be overcome." Harry felt a warmth in his chest. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mum. Without your love, without your sacrifice. I wouldn't be here." Lily's expression was full of love. "You are the greatest gift we ever gave the world, Harry. Never forget that." Harry nodded, wiping his tears away. "I won't, Mum. I promise." The legacy of House Peverell was secure. Harry had built a coalition of allies, exposed the corruption of the old families, and restored his family's influence. The magical world was changing, and he was at the center of that change. But the journey was far from over. The darkness was still out there, waiting. Voldemort was still a threat, gathering his forces in the shadows. Harry knew that the final battle was coming. But he was ready. He had the power of the Peverells in his blood, the love of his mother in his heart, and the support of his allies at his back. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And he would not fail. The stars shone down on him, cold and distant but also full of promise. Harry looked up at them, feeling a sense of connection to something larger than himself. He was part of a legacy that stretched back centuries, a legacy of courage, honor, and sacrifice. He would carry that legacy forward, into the future. And he would make his family proud. The night stretched on, dark and full of mystery. But Harry was not afraid. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. And he would rise to meet whatever the future held. The legacy of the Peverells would not end with him. It would continue, stronger and brighter than ever before. Harry closed his eyes, feeling the ancient magic of his ancestors flowing through his veins. He was ready. He was more than ready. He was the last Peverell, and he would make his family proud. Chapter 6, The Lord of Death's Legacy. The rain fell in sheets across the gardens of Peverell Manor, turning the grass into a shimmering sea of green and silver. Harry stood at the window of his chambers, watching the droplets race down the glass, each one a tiny world of its own, reflecting the grey sky above. The storm had come suddenly, sweeping in from the mountains with a fury that seemed almost personal, as if the heavens themselves were mourning something. Harry felt the weight of the day pressing down on him. It had been 3 years since he had first entered Gringotts, 3 years since he had discovered his true heritage. He was 8 years old now, but he felt much older, his soul marked by experiences that most wizards would never face in a lifetime. The door to his chambers opened, and Alastair entered, his ancient face creased with concern. "My lord, the delegations have arrived. They are waiting in the grand hall." Harry turned from the window, his expression composed. "Thank you, Alastair. I'll be down in a moment." Alastair hesitated, his eyes searching Harry's face. "Are you well, my lord? You seem troubled." Harry managed a small smile. "I'm fine, Alastair. Just thinking about everything that's happened. Everything that's still to come." Alastair nodded, his understanding clear. "The weight of the Peverell legacy is heavy, my lord. But you carry it with grace and strength. Harry felt a warmth in his chest. "Thank you, Alistair. Your support means more than you know." The old elf bowed. "It is my honor to serve you, my lord. Always." The grand hall was filled with representatives from across the magical world. The allied families were there, the Longbottoms, the Bones, the Tonks, the Weasleys, the Patils, the Lovegoods, the Greengrasses. They had come to celebrate the formal recognition of House Peverell as one of the premier families of magical Britain. But there were others. 2. Representatives from the Ministry, their faces carefully neutral. Representatives from the International Confederation of Wizards, their expressions curious and assessing. And representatives from the old families, their faces pale with barely suppressed resentment. Harry walked to the head of the table, his robes of green and silver flowing behind him. The signet ring on his finger glowed with a soft, inner light, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. He felt the eyes of the assembled wizards and witches on him, their gazes filled with a mixture of respect, curiosity, and suspicion. "Welcome, everyone," he said, his voice steady and clear. "I am honored by your presence here today. This is a momentous occasion, the formal recognition of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell as a pillar of the magical community." A murmur of approval rippled through the room. Harry smiled, but his eyes were sharp, watching the faces of the old family's representatives. He could see the resentment in their expressions, the barely concealed anger. "We have come a long way," Harry continued. "When I first claimed my inheritance, I was a boy who knew nothing of his heritage. But I have learned, I have grown, and I have built a coalition that stands for justice, honor, and the rule of law." Lucius Malfoy, who was seated at the far end of the table, shifted in his seat. His face was pale, his eyes cold, but he said nothing. His influence had been shattered by the evidence of his crimes, but his resentment remained. Harry met his gaze, unflinching. "The Peverells have always been a family of visionaries. We have always sought to push the boundaries of magic, to explore the unknown, and to build a better world. That is the legacy I intend to carry forward." The room erupted in applause. Harry nodded, acknowledging the support, but his mind was already racing ahead. There was more to be done. Much more. The formal ceremony was held in the gardens, under a canopy of enchanted stars that shone despite the storm clouds above. Harry stood at the center of the circle, his wand raised, his voice ringing through the night. The Peverell magic flowed through him, ancient and powerful, connecting him to his ancestors and his descendants. "By the blood of the Peverells," he said, his voice echoing through the garden. "By the magic of our ancestors. By the legacy of our house. I hereby declare that the ancient and most noble House of Peverell is restored to its full glory." A pulse of golden light erupted from his ring, spreading through the garden like a wave. The statues of his ancestors stirred, their stone eyes flickering with recognition and approval. The magic of the manor rose up to meet him, embracing him, welcoming him home. The allied families cheered, their voices rising in triumph. And Harry stood at the center of it all, his heart full of hope and determination. But the celebration was short-lived. The next morning, Harry was summoned to the library by Griphook. The goblin's expression was grave, his eyes filled with a darkness that Harry had never seen before. "What is it?" Harry asked, his heart racing. "What's happened?" Griphook set a piece of parchment on the desk. "A message from the Ministry. They have received intelligence that Voldemort is planning to attack the manor. He has gathered his forces and is preparing to strike." Harry felt the blood drain from his face. "How do they know?" Griphook's eyes glittered. "They have informants within the Death Eaters. The intelligence is reliable. Voldemort will attack within the week." Harry took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He had known this day was coming. He had prepared for it, trained for it. But knowing and facing were two different things. "We need to be ready," he said, his voice steady. "We need to fortify the wards, gather our allies, and prepare for the attack." Griphook nodded. "I have already begun making preparations. The goblins will stand with you, Lord Peverell. We have not forgotten our alliance with the Peverells." Harry felt a surge of gratitude. Thank you, Griphook. I don't know what I would do without you. The goblin's expression softened slightly. You would find a way, Lord Peverell. You always do. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Harry worked tirelessly with his allies, fortifying the wards of the manor and gathering reinforcements. The allied families sent their best fighters, their strongest wizards and witches. The goblins sent a contingent of warriors, their weapons gleaming with ancient magic. Even the ministry sent a small force of aurors, their presence a sign that the establishment was finally taking the threat seriously. Harry trained harder than ever, honing his skills and deepening his connection to the Peverell magic. He practiced the shield of intent until it was second nature, channeling his will into a barrier that could withstand almost any attack. He practiced offensive spells, mastering techniques that would allow him to fight back against the darkness. And he prepared for the worst. He made plans for evacuation, for escape routes, for contingencies that would ensure the survival of his allies and the continuation of his legacy. But despite all the preparation, Harry knew that the battle would come down to him. He was the one Voldemort wanted. He was the one who had been marked for death since infancy. And he was the one who had to face the Dark Lord. The night of the attack arrived, cold and dark. Harry stood on the balcony of his chambers, watching the darkness gather on the horizon. The wards of the manor shimmered with golden light, their protective barrier a fragile shield against the approaching storm. Alastair appeared beside him, his ancient face lined with worry. The wards are holding, my lord. But they won't hold forever. Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. I know. That's why I'm going out there. Alastair's eyes widened. My lord, you can't. It's too dangerous. Harry turned to face him, his expression firm. I have to, Alastair. Voldemort wants me. If I stay behind the wards, he'll just keep attacking until they fall. But if I face him, I can end this. Alastair opened his mouth to protest, but Harry cut him off. I've trained for this. I've prepared for this. The Peverell magic is strong within me. I can do this. The old elf's eyes filled with tears. Please be careful, my lord. Please come back. Harry placed a hand on his shoulder. I will, Alastair. I promise. The battle was fierce. Harry walked through the wards, crossing the boundary that had protected him for so long. The Death Eaters were gathered on the other side, their wands raised, their faces twisted with hatred. At their center stood Voldemort, tall and terrible, his red eyes gleaming with malevolent intelligence. Harry Potter, Voldemort hissed, his voice like a snake's. The boy who lived. The Lord of the Peverells. We meet at last. Harry raised his wand, his heart pounding. I'm not afraid of you, Voldemort. I've faced worse than you. Voldemort laughed, a cold, cruel sound. You are brave, I'll give you that. But bravery without power is useless. And you, boy, have no power that can match mine. Harry felt a surge of defiance. You're wrong. I have the power of the Peverells in my blood. I have the love of my parents in my heart. And I have the support of my allies. That is more power than you can ever imagine. Voldemort's eyes narrowed. Love. Such a pathetic concept. It has no place in the world of power. Harry shook his head. That's where you're wrong, Voldemort. Love is the most powerful force in the universe. It's what defeated you the first time, and it's what will defeat you again. Voldemort raised his wand, a sickly green light gathering at its tip. We'll see about that. And then the battle began. The Death Eaters attacked, their curses flying through the air like a rain of death. Harry raised his wand, channeling his intent magic into a shield of protection that deflected the dark spells. Protego Maxima, he shouted, his voice echoing through the night. The shield erupted in front of him, golden and shimmering, absorbing the dark magic and dispersing it into the air. Harry could feel the strain, the immense effort required to maintain the barrier. But he didn't give up. He thought of his mother, of the sacrifice she had made. He thought of his father, of the courage he had shown. He thought of all the people who believed in him, who had stood by him through the darkest moments. And he fought. The battle raged for hours, the darkness pressing in from all sides. Harry used every spell he had learned, every technique he had mastered. He dodged and weaved, his body moving with the grace of a trained warrior. Voldemort watched from the shadows, his red eyes gleaming with cold amusement. He was waiting, biding his time, letting his followers tire Harry out. Harry knew what he was doing. The Dark Lord was patient, cunning. He would wait until Harry was exhausted, and then he would strike. But Harry had a plan of his own. He fought his way through the Death Eaters, his wand blazing with golden light. The Peverell magic surged through him, ancient and powerful, giving him strength beyond his years. And then, he faced Voldemort. The Dark Lord stepped out of the shadows, his wand raised, his expression cold and cruel. "You have fought well, boy. But this is the end." Harry met his gaze, his eyes steady. "This is the end, Voldemort. But not for me. For you." Voldemort laughed. "You think you can defeat me? I am the most powerful wizard in the world. I have conquered death itself. You are nothing but a child." Harry shook his head. "You haven't conquered death, Voldemort. You've only postponed it. And now, it's coming for you." He raised his wand, focusing his intent. The Peverell magic surged through him, ancient and powerful, filling him with a strength he had never known. "By the blood of the Peverells," he said, his voice steady and cold. "By the magic of our ancestors. By the legacy of our house. I command the power of the Hallows to strike you down." The golden light exploded from his wand, brilliant and blinding. It struck Voldemort with the force of a hurricane, throwing him backward, his wand flying from his hand. Voldemort screamed, a sound of pure agony, as the Peverell magic consumed him. His body dissolved into shadows, his spirit unraveling into the void. And then, he was gone. The Death Eaters fled, their leader defeated, their cause lost. The darkness that had hung over the magical world for so long finally lifted, replaced by a light that seemed to shine from the very heart of the earth. Harry stood in the center of the battlefield, his wand still raised, his body trembling with exhaustion. The golden light faded, and he collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Alastair was at his side in an instant, his ancient hand steadying him. "My lord. Are you all right?" Harry managed a weak smile. "I'm fine, Alastair. I'm fine." The allied families rushed forward, their faces filled with relief and joy. They had won. The darkness was defeated. The Peverell legacy was secure. And Harry, the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell, had led them to victory. The aftermath of the battle was a whirlwind of celebration and mourning. Harry had lost allies in the battle, good people who had given their lives to protect the magical world. He honored them with a ceremony in the gardens, his voice thick with emotion as he spoke of their bravery and sacrifice. But there was also joy. The darkness that had threatened to consume the magical world was gone, vanquished by the power of the Peverells and the courage of their allies. Harry was hailed as a hero, the boy who lived, the Lord of Death's legacy. The magical world celebrated his victory, their voices rising in praise of the young wizard who had faced the darkness and triumphed. But Harry remained humble. He knew that the victory had not been his alone. It had been the result of the courage of his parents, the loyalty of his allies, and the power of the Peverell legacy. And he was determined to honor that legacy, to build a future worthy of the sacrifices that had been made. The formal ceremonies took place in the grand hall of the manor, the first time the space had been used for such a purpose in centuries. Harry stood at the center of the room, his robes of green and silver shimmering in the candlelight. The signet ring on his finger glowed with an inner light, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. "By the blood of the Peverells," he said, his voice ringing through the hall. "By the magic of our ancestors. By the legacy of our house. I hereby declare that the ancient and most noble House of Peverell is secure. The darkness is defeated. The light has returned." The allies cheered, their voices rising in triumph. Harry smiled, his heart full of hope and determination. He had done it. He had restored the legacy of his family. He had defeated the darkness. He had built a world where justice and honor prevailed. And now, he would lead the magical world into a new era. The years that followed were a time of peace and prosperity. Harry worked tirelessly with his allies to rebuild the magical world, to heal the wounds of the past, and to create a future that was worthy of the sacrifices that had been made. He established new institutions, reformed the ministry, and created a new order based on justice, honor, and the rule of law. The Peverell legacy flourished. Harry's leadership inspired a new generation of wizards and witches, who looked to him as a symbol of hope and possibility. And Harry, the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell, became one of the most beloved and respected figures in magical history. But Harry never forgot the lessons of his past. He never forgot the years of abuse and neglect, the struggles and challenges that had shaped him. He never forgot the love of his parents, the loyalty of his allies, and the power of the Peverell legacy. And he never forgot the promise he had made to himself, to his family, and to the magical world. He would never let the darkness return. He would never let the forces of evil threaten the peace that had been won at such a great cost. He would protect the magical world, no matter the cost. The final ceremony was held in the gardens of the manor, under the light of the stars. Harry stood at the center of the circle, his wand raised, his voice ringing through the night. The Peverell magic flowed through him, ancient and powerful, connecting him to his ancestors and his descendants. "By the blood of the Peverells," he said, his voice echoing through the garden. "By the magic of our ancestors. By the legacy of our house. I hereby declare that the ancient and most noble House of Peverell will endure forever." A pulse of golden light erupted from his ring, spreading through the garden like a wave. The statues of his ancestors stirred, their stone eyes flickering with recognition and approval. The magic of the manor rose up to meet him, embracing him, welcoming him home. And Harry stood at the center of it all, his heart full of hope and determination. He had done it. He had restored the legacy of his family. He had defeated the darkness. He had built a new era of justice and honor. And now, he would carry that legacy into the future, for all the generations to come. The stars shone down on him, cold and distant but also full of promise. Harry looked up at them, feeling a sense of connection to something larger than himself. He was part of a legacy that stretched back centuries, a legacy of courage, honor, and sacrifice. He would carry that legacy forward, into the future. He would ensure that the Peverell name was remembered for generations to come. And he would make his family proud. The night stretched on, dark and full of mystery. But Harry was not afraid. He was the lord of the ancient and most noble House of Peverell. He was the lord of death's legacy. And he would rise to meet whatever the future held. The legacy of the Peverells would not end with him. It would continue, stronger and brighter than ever before. Harry closed his eyes, feeling the ancient magic of his ancestors flowing through his veins. He was ready. He was more than ready. He was the last Peverell, and he had made his family proud. The end.